Streaming everything. We have a microphone here which is like taking the whole room, so we are live. Okay, so hello, welcome to our next Bruno Java user group meetup. Today we have Bruno Souza from SouJava, if I remember correctly.
Yes, that's right, yes.
Java Champion, talking about our development careers. Today we will have more like a discussion format, so if you will not be able to hear anybody, please tell me so I can adjust the acoustics. But hopefully it will be okay. So we have a few people in the room. Please don't be discouraged to speak. This should be a discussion, right?
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, Bruno, board is yours.
All right, so that's the camera right there, right? So
Yeah.
I have to be here. If I sit down, is that okay?
Yeah.
Maybe I sit down here.
Yeah.
Once we get that. So are people online? Can they message you?
Yeah.
And-
Yeah, they can.
Okay.
I will be reading it out to you.
Sorry.
I will be reading it out to you.
Okay, so everyone that's online, say hello. You know, if you wanna say a quick hello, so you know that you can hear us, right? If you know, because where's the microphone? Right there.
Yeah.
Is that
But
one
they,
there?
they cannot speak because it's streamed on YouTube. So it's only messages. It's on YouTube.
Oh, it's on YouTube. Okay. All right, that's good. So maybe maybe I should. Do I need to message on my Twitter and send to everyone else?
Yeah, I will definitely do that once I will set it.
Okay. So if you're streaming on YouTube, can you message me on LinkedIn the link for YouTube?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, because then I'll promote everywhere. All right. So if you're here, so if you're here as well, let us know on the screen. Actually, if it's streaming on YouTube, I can probably just access here, and then I can see the chat too, right? So you guys are gonna be privileged because we're gonna work on your career a lot more than other people, right? Because of course I can talk to you, but whoever's online, we can also work on your career. So while we get the link going, I'm gonna start by giving you guys a gift. How about that? Let me. Actually, this mic, right? So, okay. So that's my. I've got several gifts for you guys. But that's my physical gifts.
Thank you.
Okay, and the other one's gonna be digital, right? So
Well,
that's the reputational formula, right? So it's the reputational formula are 7 things you need to increase reputation. 3 things you need to decrease to increase reputation. Okay? So we're gonna talk a little bit about that. Okay, you sent me the message here, so let me just get this thing here. Okay, everyone online, sorry, I'm gonna turn my back to you for minutes. Right, okay. Online, let me mute this. Oops, shoots. Let me mute this. Okay. And at some point you can switch the screen with me, right?
for
Over there? So-
like not on the YouTube, but like I can like share if I need to.
No. I'm just saying right now, I'm very small and this screen is really big.
Oh,
You can switch those two.
I
Right?
can if you
Okay,
want.
Yes, because I'm gonna use very little on the screen, so
Okay then.
that's okay. All right. So now that we have this.
But this
here-
will be very ad hoc.
Oh, is it? Okay, can't you just switch them too? Oh, you're gonna have to do it.
I will do it like this.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that.
No worries. I just wasn't prepared for that.
Okay, so I'll have my back for you guys here for a second, but I'll be right there. All right, so now I'm gonna get this link, and I'm gonna do x.com, and I will promote it. If you can see it, more people should have, right?
Hopefully, I am going to do the same.
It's here. All right, so let me just do this. And what's your on Twitter? What's your
Bruno Jack.
Bruno Jack, right?
Yes.
Okay, here is good. Our career conversation live. this for SouJava too. How about that? We're gonna do English. We have an English channel here. I'm just gonna do this. All right, good. I post in several places. All right.
I'm following.
So, okay. So how about so you guys have something interesting to record, right? So how about I talk a little bit of the repetition formula, right? And then we're gonna use the repetition formula to build the career. How about that? Is that good thing, right? And then my idea here with you, especially with you guys here, they're online, they're here in person, is that we're gonna work together to figure out how you get your career to the next level, right? So I'm very, very good at helping senior developers to grow their careers, right? So just give me an idea here. Who here's a senior? Everyone, right? From looking at you guys, right? Everyone. How many years of career do you have?
Sorry?
How many years of career do you have?
6.
6. How many years of career do you have? 22. Right? How many years?
2.
What do you
Or
mean
3. 3.
What do you mean?
At the moment 3. Only 3. I'm young. I'm still young.
Okay, so are you like just out of the university 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Would you work on something else before?
Not in IT or maybe half a year probably.
No, I mean, I'm saying not in IT. Because you don't look like, how old are you? I'm sorry for that.
I'm 29.
29, okay. So you should be working for at least 10 years now.
I enjoy my school days for fullest.
Okay, all right.
I build the system, and after that I'm working.
That's good. Okay, so now there's a reason. Why I'm saying this, guys, because that's important, right? The reality is like this. If you're doing an interview, for example, right, and someone looks at him, and that's what we think, right? He's not like at university right now, right? I'm not saying, so it's not anything against you, right? It's just that, look at you, and you see that you have at least 10 years that you should be doing something. And you tell me that's only 2, something is wrong, right? And that's what people are gonna ask. But now, you're giving the story, right? So I've used the system, I stay study a long time, that's okay. Now there's a story that explains it, right? And there's a story that explains it, it's okay. Because now I'm not guessing anymore. I'm not here like, this guy's not telling me the truth. Make sense?
Yeah.
And then in the interview is gonna be like this anyway, right? He's gonna think the same way, right? How about you guys? How many years of career do you have?
How many?
10, 20, 30, 40,
7, 8.
8? Okay, that's good. How about you?
Almost 11.
Almost 11. Okay, very good, right? So, everyone is a senior professional, not you, right? Because you're just starting, right? I understand. That's okay. So that's good. So if you're watching us online and you want to say how many years of career you have, let me see if I can get here and I can see how long things are. Okay, yes. All right. Okay, so if you're online, you want to say anything in the chats, that's also good, right? Okay, so there's a few people watching. I can see that. It's good. So tell us if you're online, tell us how many years of career do you have, right? So I can adjust the conversation here for you. All right. So let's talk a little bit about reputation, guys, because reputation is reputation is the most important thing for our careers. All right? Reputation is going to give you, reputation is more important in your house, more important in your job, is more important in your salary. Because it's going to give you that and a lot more, right? So that's a phrase from high school blitz, right? And he said that a few months ago when he came to my mentorship group. And he says, if you position yourself as an expert, you get called to solve the most complex problems. And when you solve the complex problems, that's when you become the expert. We tend to think the opposite, right? That we first need to learn, and then we become good, become expert, then we get called to solve problems. But that's not how it works. The reality is that if people see you as someone that's able to do something, that's capable to do a piece of work, They'll call you to do that work. And then once you try to do it and you work on it, you fail, you succeed, that's when you become the expert. Make sense? And you that have 22 years of career, isn't how you did your whole career? Isn't how you did your whole career?
Yeah, try.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you do, right? So you work on things, you get better at it, right? And with 22 years of career, you've learned a lot of different things, right? And you, I'm sure you did projects with things you had never seen before. A boss comes to you and say, hey, we need to implement this thing here, and you went there and did it, right? That's how it works, guys. Especially for your beginning, you have to position yourself as the expert, right? So, and how do we do this? That's what reputation is, right? And reputation, you already have the formula there, right? So, reputation is a formula, right? There are things you need to increase reputation. There are things you need to decrease to increase reputation, right? You don't look convinced.
I didn't get what you said.
There are things you need to increase
Yeah,
to increase reputation.
yeah, yeah.
And there are things you need to decrease to increase reputation. Make sense?
Yeah.
Right? You know, so that's the thing, right? Now, you guys already have that, but you have the new reputation formula in your hands, but the original reputation formula was like this. And people said it was too complex. So then I changed it to this, and people said it was even more complex, and then I changed the words and it became reputation, right? So that's the one you guys have. Much easier to remember, right? So 7 things you need to do. You need to increase reputation. 3 things you need to stop doing. You need to decrease to increase reputation. Okay? So what are those things? Let's talk about a few of them. First one, purpose. You have to have a clear focus. Reputation is what people believe about you. So if they don't believe anything about you, or if what they believe about you is confusing, then your reputation is confusing. Make sense? So people need to have a clear vision, a clear understanding of what you do. And one thing that people say a lot is that, we're here in the Java as a group, so a lot of people say, for example, I'm a Java developer. Have you ever described yourself as a Java developer?
Yes.
Yeah? So here's the thing. When you say I'm a Java developer, you're just putting yourself in this bucket with 12 million other people. They all say, I'm a Java developer. Right? People with 6 years of career, people with 20 years of career, people with 2 years of career, they all say, I'm a Java developer. And that's some reputation. I'm not going to say not, right? It is some reputation. But for example, a silly thing, but that's the reality. You are here, you live here in Bruno, right? So if there is a company in Bruno that want to hire a Java developer, it's better to hire you than to hire someone in Brazil, for example. Make sense? So you have an advantage to companies in Bruno, right? But the reality is that you want to have more advantages. So people want to work with you. So people call you to work with them. Because remember, when you position yourself as the expert, you get called to solve the most complex problems. And when you solve the complex problems, that's when you become the expert. So what you want to do is that you want to position yourself in a way that, the best companies, the best product is inside your company. I'm not even talking about multiple companies, just inside your company. If your company has, let's say 100 developers, or maybe 20 developers, doesn't matter the size, right? If your company has 100 developers, for example, and you're the one seen as capable to solve some big problem, you get called to solve that big problem. Make sense? And what happens a lot is that, for example, let's say the company comes in and say, look, we have this project about AI. We have to implement this AI thing. And then, you think, oh, I really want to do an AI stuff. That would be really good for me. I could learn a lot, but I have not done anything. I know nothing about AI. Too bad, I'm gonna miss this opportunity. And then he thinks, oh man, I really would like to do something about AI. It would be very good for me. But I know nothing about AI. And then I wanna do it. Right? And so who gets the job? Who gets to do the project? He does, and you don't. You both don't know what you're talking about. You both never done anything with it. But the person that puts a reputation that says, I can do it, that's the person that gets the job.
But isn't it lying?
No, you're just saying,
When
I want to do
say
it.
I could do it, but I have zero experience. During the conversation, when someone is going to hire me,
Mhm.
it should level up that I don't have practical experience. I
You could
just
say if
like
you
to.
want, yeah, but that's not the important part. You know, here, you have the most experience here. How many times in your job, you know, are you the most experienced person in the team? There are people more experienced than you.
We are on pretty much same level and the same experience as me.
Okay, so
Unless everyone has experience in one better than others, and then
right, so everyone has 20 years of experience.
4 or 5 people are like that.
Okay.
There's around 10.
That's good. All right, so you know, how many times in your 20 years of career, there are something that needs to be done with projects that you had to just figure it out?
Always.
Always. Exactly. So that's exactly what you do. Always. You have to figure out. So everything, you know, that's like this everywhere. When I hire you, I'm not hiring you for, oh, you know, you're already solving my problem. Because you didn't solve my problem yet. Right? If I hire you for a new job, for a new project, you don't know anything. Look, I'm a consultant. When I join a team, I'm the person that knows less about the project. Right? Because I know nothing about the project. You guys know a lot more than I do. But my job is to be responsible and actually do what needs to be done. And when you say, I always have to do this, you always figure it out, right? You always do what needs to be done. And that's what's important. It's not lying if you say, I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to do it. Make sense?
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Because that's how you did it the whole life. Your whole 20 years of career, that's exactly how you did it. Right? And let me tell you this. Companies are more, every single company, they understand that things change, that, you know, projects are different, problems appear out of nowhere, right? Every single company wants people that are able to solve the problems. Not people that know all the problems should be solved, because we can't know that. I was actually having a conversation maybe a couple of years ago. I visited this guy in the US that he was a serial entrepreneur. So he invests in lots of different companies. And so he was telling me about the story about the last company he was working on, that the company was expanding beyond the US. So he needed someone to be the director, the vice president of sales for international business. And there was this guy that he knew and he trusted, right? That told him, said, look, I know you're looking for someone at sales. I know nothing about sales. I never sold anything in my life. But if you put me in that position, I'll make it work. And the guy said, sure, hire him. And the guy made it work. Right? So what people want is someone that's willing to do the work.
Yeah, but it also goes against the reputation if you say that you are able to do it and then you will not
Right.
deliver.
Don't lie. We're going to get here. Yes, here. Never lie. Never lie. No, I mean, you can say, I'm able to do it, but I have never done it before. You know, if you're confident that you can do it, right? You know, yeah, I'll figure it out. You know, I'm a consultant. I'm hired to solve problems, and I'll figure it out. Right?
Yeah.
But I can say, I never did anything with that stuff before. Like the sales guy I was talking about here. He said, I have never done sales before. I know nothing about sales, but if you hire me, I'm gonna figure it out. That's okay.
So in my experience, it doesn't really matter. If you don't deliver, people will not remember that you put any kind of like defense in front. Like if you say that you are going to do something and then you will not deliver, you will be judged the same.
Right, of course. Yeah, if you don't do it, right? Let's take action. You're gonna get there, right? Let's take action. If you don't do things, you're gonna have a terrible reputation. That's true. Very true. Right? And so, but you know, let's just think about this really quick here. Right now, NASA just sent the astronauts to space, right? They want to run the moon. 50 years that no one has done that, right? So they've done it now. Imagine this. At that team, there was a trainee, right? That had never done any of that before, right? And he participated in that project, and now he's an expert, right? So when you position yourself as an expert, right? You get called to solve the hardest problems. And when you solve the hardest problems, you become the expert.
That's kind of chicken and egg problem.
It is, right? You know? So that's why it's very important that you have a clear purpose. That you have a clear message. That people know what you are good at. What do you want to do? What are the things that you care about? Right? Because if people know what you care about, they call you for what you want to do. And one interesting thing about this whole thing about, I'm just kind of talk, I'm kind of ahead of my time here. Expertise is important. So I think expertise is kind of, expertise, right? So let's talk about expertise for a second here. It's interesting that we tend to think, for example, let's imagine this NASA going around the moon thing. Who here knows anything about space? You guys like space, right? So you're interested in space, right? Have you ever done anything? Just study.
Yeah, I haven't been to space if you're asking that.
No, I mean, done something like maybe build a rocket in your backyard.
No.
No, you have not done.
I used to have a telescope when I was younger.
You used to have what?
A telescope.
A telescope. Okay, so you did a telescope, right? So you're interested in that, right? Now imagine if for some magic, right, you got hired to participate on this NASA project. Is there something that you do know that could be helpful?
Well, because I was following that, I can tell you that I think that I would, because I also have experience with Outlook.
Right? You know?
Which version?
So you could be the one configuring Outlook for NASA, right? You know, you could be the one doing job development for NASA. I mean, there are things that you could do that for the project. Every single project, guys, there are things that you can do if you're willing to go do that because the project is important for you. So that's what purpose is all about. Once you know what you're good at or what you're interested in, right, you can figure out a way to use that thing that you know to help whatever project there is. Even if it's installing Outlook.
I also think that you don't need to be really afraid that you don't know something, because you can always learn in order to solve the problem.
Yeah, that's the whole thing we're talking about here, right? Exactly, right? So now, for that, people need to have an idea of who you are. They need to see value in what you're doing. Make sense? That's what purpose is, right? So you position yourself as someone that, for example, I'm the Outlook expert, right? You know, now I'm gonna have to use that, right?
I will put it on my resume.
You put it on your resume. Right? Is it not there yet?
No.
Why are you talking about Outlook then?
No, and it will probably never will be.
Okay, all right. So another thing that we need, right, is trust. You know, this whole thing we're talking about here, right, is about trust. If I trust you can do it, if I trust you can help me, you know, I will work with you because it's better to work with someone that I trust than just someone that puts something on paper that I have no idea.
Before you move on, I'm still interested in that expertise versus purpose. If you would have like the two people for the same job, as you were describing, one is really an expert but doesn't have a drive. The other one is not an expert but has a drive to solve the problem. Which one will you pick?
You know, the interesting thing about those things is that this never happens. You know, this kind of situation, we try to position that we're technical people, right? We're math thinkers, right? And so we try to make those situations, but they actually in real life, they never happen. You know, because you never have two people that have, you know, exactly the same thing, or they have one have clear experience, the other one has clear not have the experience. It never happens like this. You know, the way that happens a lot more is that, you know, this guy did some projects, this guy did more projects, or maybe less projects, right? You know, this guy's 22 years of experience, he's 6. And there's a big difference between those two, right? And so maybe he is very driven for doing something in Java, and he is very driven for something in Kotlin. Now, if I'm gonna hire someone to do a Java development, right? And of course, the 22-year experience guy is way more experienced, no doubt. But if I offer him the job, he's gonna say no. Because he doesn't want to do Java anymore. He moved to Kotlin. And so, it's like, you know, the situation, I love the situation to analyze, but the reality is that those things don't happen like this. Right? And so, of course, I would prefer, right, to have someone with more experience. In theory, that's my preference. But let me tell you this, that's what trust comes along. Imagine that you have this guy here with 6 years of experience, right, that, you know, every time you work with him, you know, maybe he was your trainee, for example, he was very good, very motivated, working very, very well, right? And, you know, he's very professional. And the 22-year experienced guy, he was a college of you in college, right? And he was abusing the system. And he never did the things, right? He always let you deliver the project. And so you know he has 22 years experience, but do you trust him? Right?
I see your point.
You know, so that's the thing, right? The reality in life. Let me give you an example, interesting example. About this whole thing about purpose and everything, right? Have you guys ever heard about the hidden job markets? No? Okay, so let me explain what it is. Research shows that at least 75% of the positions are filled by indication, by network. Right? And so, in a good amount of those positions, they are filled without ever having anything online. You know, this guy here tells me, I'm just gonna move to Brazil, right? And so I don't want to work for you anymore, right? I'm leaving. And so, what is the first thing I ask him if he tells me that? You know, let's assume there's nothing I can offer him. He's not gonna stay no matter what. So what do I ask him?
What you gonna do there?
No, doesn't matter. You know, you're going. So you're not gonna stay. No, doesn't matter. So what do I ask you?
Are you sure?
Yeah, no, you're trying to convince him, right? So the idea is not to convince. He's not gonna change his mind. You know, he's gonna, I don't know, he's gonna open a coconut stand in the beach in Brazil. He's gonna love it, right? So
I think one thing to say would be if you wouldn't like it, then you think, because it could be different to what you think. Just doors here are open for you.
right,
That's
yeah.
what I would do personally.
Right, because we're just trying to convince the guy. So there's no convince, right? So, you know, if there's no convincing, you ask him, do you know anyone that can do your job? Right?
Yeah.
And then he says, yeah, you know, he can do my job. I know him. I've worked with him in the past. He's a great guy. And I call you and say, hey, I have this great job. Pays very well. It's fully remote. You know, you can work, you know, it's awesome. Great technology. You want to work for me? And then you say yes. Now, that position is what we call the hidden job market. It never shows up anywhere. And he only got the job because he was suggested, because I knew him, because I trusted him somehow. And then he got the job. That's the hidden job market, right? Now, here's what happens in a lot of, all the time. And maybe it happens in your companies, maybe it even happened with you, because it's very, very common. When I joined Sun for the second time, I was the, I'm not sure if you guys know this, but the Czech Republic was the place where the NetBeans team used to be, right? So there's a big team in Prague, all that. There's still a lot of people there, but it's not the team anymore. But, and I was hired to be the NetBeans community manager, the worldwide NetBeans community manager. So, and at that time, NetBeans was the most important open source project from Sun. And when I negotiated my future boss, I spent 4 months negotiating with her because I had worked for Sun before. I did not want to work for Sun again, and I had my own company at the time. So I tried to get her to hire me as a contractor, so I didn't have to leave my company. And so she did not want to do that. I was asking too much money. She didn't have enough money. 4 months negotiating. And then we finally agreed. She made me an offer. I accept the offer, right? And then there was Wednesday. I accept the offer. And then on Thursday, she called me and said, Bruno, the whole team is here in Prague. Can you travel today to meet us? And Brazil's like 5 hours behind, right? So when she called me, it's like, my day was gone, right? So then I told her, I said, look, there's no way I can do this today, right? It's impossible. So, but I could travel tomorrow. And she said, okay, perfect. Travel tomorrow then. I'll see you in Prague. So then, I was already working on flight tickets and everything, and then she called me again. And she said, Bruno, HR has just posted your position online. Can you please go there and submit a resume? Yeah. That's the hidden job market, guys. Because that's what HR has to do. When she calls HR and say, I have to hire this guy, here's the salary I agree with him, here's his contact information, etc., etc., etc. HR does the HR business, right? They go and create a position. The position is announced internally. The position is announced externally. Right? Now, that's the position for the worldwide NetBeans community manager. There is a big chance that a lot of people submit to that position. There could be other people that submit to that position. Maybe someone working here in Prague on the technical team for NetBeans, maybe they wanted to have that position. They could have submit that. And they might be a better community manager than I am because they were part of the team. Do you guys have any idea how many people submit to that position? No? Neither do I. Neither does my boss. Because she never looked at it. Right? And that's the thing. The reality is, once I have the trust, I get the position. I'm talking about external position just to show the example, but that's true internally too. When I trust you, you get to do the job. Make sense?
But it also goes the other way, because if I would be in the position that I see, like, imagine that I'm at the technical team and this is something that I want to do. There is a job posting, I will submit. I would be really curious what they will say when they will reject me. Like, what is the reasoning why they are rejecting me? Because if they tell me that they already have Bruno, that trust goes both ways.
Yeah, that's why no one ever tells you. Right? That's why the vast majority of job offers that you submit, no one replies you back. Because what are we gonna say? Oh, sorry, that position never existed? They can't say that. Right? So what they say? Nothing.
Thank you, we chose another candidate.
Thank you, we chose another candidate. We have decided to go for another candidate.
Yeah.
Exactly.
This is better than just ghosting you.
Right.
Uh,
Yes, that's true. A lot of those companies will just ghost you completely, right? They're never gonna tell you anything. Yes, that's exactly how it happens. Because of course, this is not. There's nothing I can tell you, right? I traveled one time to a big company in the U.S. and they called me. I was not looking for a job. They called me. They said, we're gonna talk to you, and and the reason they called me is because a friend of mine, is very high up in this company in Brazil, so he suggested my name, right? So they called me. I traveled from Brazil to the U.S. to have an interview with those guys, and and I spent a whole day there talking to their top directors, etc., right? And then while I was on the plane going back, I got an email saying we decided to choose another candidate. So when I landed in Brazil, I had an email in my inbox saying we decided to go for another candidate, right? And later on, I found out two interesting things I found out. First, my friends said, "It's unbelievable. How come they didn't hire you? You are the perfect person for this position." So he went internally to figure out why they didn't hire me. You know what they told him? They said that they did not hire me because I showed up for the interviews with t-shirts and jeans. Is that true? Of course not. Absolutely every single person I talked in that company was wearing t-shirts and jeans. So of course, is not the reason. And then, we went find out a little later, the guy that was hiring, he had just come from another company, right? And he hired someone from the other company, someone that he knew. So the position was never possible to be mine. But they paid my travel, they got a whole day of their directors talking to me. I spent a couple of days going back and forth to go see them, right? The advantage is that when I do these travels, I find a user group and go have a talk with the user group, right? So that's good. So
At least something.
So at least I have fun, right? So anyway, the reality is that those kind of things, guys, happen all the time. It's crazy how many times I get a mentee of mine that calls me and say, "Hey Bruno, remember that position I was interviewing for? That I got the job? They have just announced online." It happens all the time, right? Make sense?
Yeah.
That's why we need to have trust. And trust, one thing that trust implies is that I need visibility. If I don't know you, I don't trust you. If I don't see who you are, I don't trust you. So trust has a level of visibility that's important. Right? So you have to be visible to someone. It's not like you have to be an influencer and thousands of people know you, but at least the people that are potential hires for you, they're potential people you want to work with, those people need to know who you are. Right? That might mean, if you want to work with a specific technology, people in that technology might need to know you. If you want to work in a specific company, people in that company might need to know you. If you want to have a better position inside your own company, like the example you're talking about, maybe the guy from that means that wanted to be a community manager, maybe he should have a relationship not only with the technical team, but with the marketing team. Right? Because that was actually true. One of the evangelists of NetBeans was previously an engineer for NetBeans. And so he wanted to be an evangelist, and so they put him in that position. Cool?
I would just say that it's if we are talking about programming, like
Mhm.
Java developer, it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to be seen like public figure or like your face needs to be
No.
known. It means that like you need to have like coding
Yeah.
basically baggage that you are able to prove that this is what you did.
Yeah, both work. Just want you to know that, both work, right? There's many people that are visible, because they have visibility, they know people and they get hired, right? Because of that. And there are also people that are known for the technical abilities that they get hired. Both things work.
But I mean that for like many people that are like programmers, they very often are not very extrovert, so it might be problematic for them. But
Yeah.
that's what I'm trying to say, that it's not the only way how
Right.
to be seen.
I totally 100% agree with you. You can, that's what expertise is all about. You can have expertise, right? But remember that's a formula, so nothing can be zero here. If you have a lot of expertise and just a little bit of visibility, that works, right? Because the right people know you and that's perfect. So you don't have to be an extrovert, you don't have to be giving talks, you don't have to be writing articles, right? But the people that need to know you, they should know you. It also doesn't work. I was talking to a developer, some time ago, and he was telling me that's very very interesting related to what you're talking about. He was telling me that when he joined the company that he works for, he joined with some other friends about 10 years ago. And so in those 10 years, all of his friends have grown inside the company. And he has not. And he's a great developer, he's an open source developer, he has lots of experience behind him, but no one knows him, even inside his own company. So a little bit of visibility you have to have, right? Nothing can be zero, okay? All right, let me just kind of accelerate here so we can talk about your careers a little bit too, right? So, several things I'm just gonna do one more here. So seven things here together, right? So first of all, responsibility. One thing that I see developers are very afraid to take responsibility because they think responsibility means more work. That's not true. Responsibility means that you're responsible for something, right? Does not necessarily mean more work. Uplift the idea of being a giver. You have to help everyone else. So those guys right there in the back, they spend time organizing this whole thing here, right? So, you guys showed up here. I'm not sure, is anyone here also helping out the user group? No, okay, so just them two. All right, so, so you guys showed up here, and for you just show up, you eat, you have a conversation, you learn something, you go away. They're here for several days, we've been discussing me coming here over LinkedIn for a lot, they have to organize things, you gotta be someone that does things. Otherwise, you get a terrible reputation, the reputation of the guy that never does. And that reputation is terrible, right? A good way to measure how good your reputation is, right? If you talk to a friend of yours, and he's, oh man, I'm looking for a new job, and he says, yes, I know someone that has a job, right? Someone, someone that you don't trust, you never suggest to come work for your team. You all suggest to go work for someone else, right? If they're your friend, right, they're gonna suggest it to someone else. So that's something to pay attention to. All right, and of course, autonomy. Autonomy is one of the most important things for us because if you have autonomy, you do what you want. That's what autonomy means, right? So the capability of doing the things that you want to do, right? Or make your own decision, let's say, right? We as developers, we have a lot of autonomy in our code, for example. There's rarely someone looking and say, oh, you have to change this, right? We make a lot of decisions on our code. But autonomy means more than that, right? So, the more autonomy you have, the more you can choose technology, the more you can choose what time you work on, the more you can choose where you work on, what kind of project you're working on, what kind of things you're doing. So autonomy is like a dream. Autonomy is interesting because autonomy, either you have it or you cannot ask for it. Because if you ask for it, that's proof that you don't have. And if you don't have, you don't deserve to have. Oh, there it is. Okay, so
I'm not sure if you want to be interrupted. We can wait until you finish. Or do you mind if they start?
So let's do this real quick. How about I just finish the 3 ones in the bottom, and then we stop for pizza. Right, so good? Because then we finish this part here.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so really quick. So autonomy is this, right? So autonomy, you don't ask for it. You conquer. Right? You earn. So autonomy is that, you figured out things that are important for you to do, important for the company, important for the project, and you put yourself on the place to do those things. Okay? The more you do that, the more autonomy you have. Okay? Now, again, this here, it balances out, right? So if you don't have autonomy, if a kind of person that likes to be told what to do, you don't have to have a lot of autonomy, just they balance out, right? Now, in the bottom, we have 3 things here that you have to reduce, right? First of all, don't be the I person, me, right? Only about you, you only talk about yourself. Oh yes, I do projects, I'm great, I'm amazing. Don't be that person. No one likes that person, right? Don't lie. I always say the truth, at least don't lie. Hello, you just arrived at the right time.
Yeah, thank you.
Right? Okay, perfect. So just, sit here because there's more space here. Right? So I always say the truth, at least don't lie. That's what you were talking about at the beginning, right? So, it makes no sense for you to say that you have experience with something you don't have, for example, right? Don't lie. And lies, by the way, is really bad, right? So I've seen many people destroy amazing careers because they're caught in lies. Right?
But
So
sometimes it's not necessarily that you are lying. Sometimes you truly can believe that you can do something, and then you will find out that you are not able to.
that's a different thing. That's why I say outright lies.
Yeah, outright lies, I agree.
Right? Funny because you just gave me a reason, because people call me, just putting this just to have the word. Yes, of course. Right? But the outright lies is a hard one, right? So you can be mistaken. You can commit mistakes, no problem. Right? But if you're lying and you know you're lying on purpose, right? That's terrible. That can destroy your career. And don't be a difficult person, don't be a very negative person. Right? So let me use the negative here as an example for how the formula balances out. Everyone knows Linus Torvalds, right? The guy that's great Linux, right? So Linus Torvalds, he has everything in the reputation formula, right? So, he has a lot of responsibility, huge expertise, a very clear purpose, he uplifts everyone, he takes a lot of action, a lot of autonomy, right? He has a lot of trust, he is not an II person at all, he doesn't lie, but he's very rude, right? He used the fact that he doesn't lie to say, oh yes, because I'm saying the truth, I can say whatever I want. What's not true, right? So Linus, even though he had really, really bad negativity towards him, right? Very difficult person to work with. Lots of people complain about him. He was successful for a long time. But being a negative person will catch up with you, right? So even Linus, it's eventually, like a couple of years ago, he said, sorry guys, I now realize I'm such a difficult person, I'm gonna change, right? I don't think he did, but anyway, at least he accepted that, right? Okay, so that's the reputation formula. The more you do those things, and the more you reduce those things, the more reputation you have. And the more reputation, the more you get called to amazing projects. Make sense? And then we're gonna eat pizza now. Everyone online, go eat your own pizza. Okay, what can I say, right? We're of course not gonna be streaming us eating, right? We're gonna eat the pizza, and then we go back here for questions because I wanna see your career and apply the reputation formula to your career.
So for everybody online, we will take like half an hour pause, let's say.
Half an hour?
Yeah, I think half an hour is okay.
Too much, like 20 minutes?
20 minutes? Okay, then 20-minute pause,
20 minutes,
and then I will start the streaming again.
Yes, right.
So-
So okay, yes. Oh, are you gonna do another link? No, you're just gonna pause.
Yeah, I'm just going to probably pause and then try to reuse this one. I never done this before, so
Okay,
hopefully it will work.
Don't pause. Don't pause.
Don't pause, I will just mute.
Yes,
Okay.
just mute. Yes, mute. Maybe turn the camera off.
Okay,
Yes.
so see you in 20 minutes.
Many, but this one I picked myself, and it's a bit skulls.
Right. Yes.
Okay, we're back online.
We're back online. We're back online. So that's great.
Do you need help?
Hopefully not. Alright, so let's go to the second part. We're back in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Alright, so
Bruno, we now don't see.
what happened there?
I don't know because
Let me see.
I wasn't doing this. But did you disconnect?
Yeah, sure. Disconnect it again. Oh, I'm gonna need you for power. You have
Because it's the capture that we need to go through.
you have a power.
There should be a setting somewhere here. Oh, okay. It's under the table. If you no, under this table. There.
Oh.
There is the closest one.
Okay.
But I can give you the extension cable. Not this one.
Musíš oba.
Yeah. Extension wystarczyć.
Dostane se tam?
No.
So maybe, yeah.
There will be the extension.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you. I actually have a reasonable long cable here.
So now it should be powered. If not, then we have one more extension too.
No, that should be it. That should be more than enough.
Adam? Go. Just disconnect everything and reconnect again.
You just connect to the lines. Or it's
Technical
It
issues.
needs to work better.
Oh, it was working, so we know at least that it should be working. Guys, drink beer. I'm driving, so I can't.
I'm always driving, so.
Okay, I don't get Pohode, chytili sme. Pohode, no. Ja som, myslím, že sme obaja, ja som to aj zatlačil stoličkou. To je v pohode, no. Zvládlo to, prežilo. Všetko dobre. To bolo celé v pohode. Disconnectnutý kábel, no. Stratil voľu žiť. Well, it was working. To som bol asi nakoniec.
Máš papiky?
Mám stále pasiky, no. You will see it on the display there when I will be seeing it here. Don't worry.
Okay, it did work here. Yes, perfect.
Is this do you realize that you
Yes, just 1 second. Yes, I know it's done. Yes.
Oh, don't worry about it then, just connect it the cable directly.
No, wait, it's already working. It's just that now it's on my side. Just make sure you guys right in there. Okay. Right, so now it'll work.
Oh, unfortunately.
Perfect.
Yeah, but I don't see it in here, but yeah, don't worry about it.
You don't see there? What do you mean?
Oh,
Is it?
Ah, don't worry about it. Like, because like the capture is not catching it, but yeah, let's not
okay.
waste time.
That's okay. We're gonna go for a question anyway, so that's all good. I'm actually just gonna do this here, just so, I'm not gonna project anything, how about that?
Or I can zoom in a little bit and.
No, I'm not gonna project anything, it's always, so. Alright, so here's what I'm gonna do. I want you guys to think about two things. Okay? I want you to think about, first of all, how far do you wanna get in your career? What's your next step? What's the thing that you wanna do? What's your biggest career dream? And by the way, hello.
Hey.
Right? I'm gonna give you a gift. Why you guys are thinking I'm gonna give him a gift? So, here, that's a repetition formula. That's the thing we were talking about before.
Nice. Okay.
Okay? And the repetition formula, it looks very good in your laptop. You know, it's done to look good in the laptop, but it's the perfect size to put in your cell phone. So you don't forget, right? Okay. Everyone thought about what's the big career dream they want? It could be more than a career, right? So, you know, some people like, I want to buy a house. I want to, move to another country. Those are kind of also career dreams, right? Because to buy a house, you need to make money to buy a house, for example, right? So, it's good. So, you don't have to tell me. You can if you want to, but you don't have to tell me what your big dream is, because I want that to be your dream, right? So, and I want you to be honest with yourself, because I know some people, for example, that's their big dream is, I don't know, I want to make lots of money, but then that's not something if I tell people is going to be nice, right? So then I say, oh, I want to change the world, right? I want you to be honest with yourself. What is your big dream?
World peace.
World peace? Okay, that's a possibility, right? Then now I want you to think about something else. I want you to think about, why don't you have this right now? What is the big challenge? What prevents you from achieving that? Why can't you have this now, today?
So you want to pick somebody to really talk about this in like.
I'm gonna go with everyone. I want us to talk about, because I want to apply the repetition formula to solve your career issues. Okay? Good? Who wants to be the first? I'm gonna take notes here. It disappeared. Huh? That's not good.
Because there is no capture. I think that it's like really was just
Okay, so
a mistake.
I'll just write down here, just so I don't forget.
Well, Adam can like try to like mess with it
No.
a little bit, because we have like a spare one. Like we can
No,
try to.
that's okay, because this is not necessary to complete a projection. Because I'm just gonna write down so I don't forget.
Mhm.
Come on, who wants to be the first?
I can.
You go ahead.
I
What's
want
the
to
biggest
be.
challenge?
I want to be Java champion.
Wanna be a Java champion? Okay, good, right? Do you see my email from today?
No.
I wrote about Zara about that. That's my email for today. Wanna be a Java champion? All right.
You should really do it.
I want to be a Java champion. I'm not kidding. That's my email for today. Because you know what happened today? I was getting ready to get out of Prague and go to the station, and then a friend of mine, one of the top guys, one of the top Java champions, right? He messaged me and saying, Bruno, so and so wants to be a Java champion. I think you could give him some pointers. And I said, perfect. So at the train, I said, if the guy calls me, I can tell him something, but I'm gonna tell my whole newsletter what I'm gonna tell him if he calls me, right? So I wrote an email exactly how to be a Java champion. So we can totally talk about that. But my question is, what's the challenge?
What's the challenge?
Yeah, why you're not Java champion right now? What's missing? What's the difficulty? What's the problem?
Because for that you need to build like exactly a reputation.
Okay, build a reputation. That's good, right? Okay. Build a reputation. Perfect. All right. So who else? You don't have to tell me the dream, but I want to know the challenge. At least, if you want to tell me the dream, that's okay too.
So to achieve my dream, let's say, it means so I have to build trust.
Yeah.
Build trust
Build trust, okay.
Yeah,
And build trust to what?
in my competencies, in my skills.
No, but to achieve what? Actually, that's the question I should have asked him. I'll go back to you in a minute. You know, but you want to build trust to do what? What trust is something that it's usually not an end goal. You have to build trust for something.
Yeah. So my goal is to get into higher management positions.
Okay, high management positions. I love that. Okay.
This is not probably the only obstacle that is there,
Mhm.
but I think it's
So
important.
you're gonna build trust.
Yeah.
Now the question is, trust with whom? Who needs to trust you for you to get in a high management? And by the way, what do you call high management position? Like VP, director, C-level?
I mean, like senior software development manager or something like that.
Okay, all right, okay, good. So then, and you want to build trust with whom?
Good question.
Good question. Okay, all right. You know, build trust, right? With whom? Okay, that's probably the question, right? Go ahead. Who else? Go ahead.
I would like to make sure I could enjoy software development another 22 years.
Okay, good. All right. So what's the challenge?
And why 22?
I'm already 22, so it's another half.
Ah, right.
Right. So what's the challenge? Why you think you cannot do that? Or what you're afraid of?
Would the market interest, if I would be on market, would the market would be interested for developers over 50?
Oh,
Would
that's a good
LLM
question.
make me irrelevant? That's actually the one question I had for you. That's
Mhm.
how differently you see people who are approaching you for help to get up. How different are people over and before 50 in success or in general? What you, from your experience?
Okay. All right. So let's talk about 15 years old and more. Right. I think that's a good age. I like that.
I think I know why.
Who else? Look, there's only 3 of you guys, right? Go ahead.
I'll go. Manage my stress at work.
Okay.
And the current problem, time management.
Okay, that's a good one, right? So manage stress and manage time. All right, so let me just kind of dig in a little bit deeper on the stress thing that you're talking about. So, do you think your work is very stressful for any particular reason or?
It's more of a me problem than a
Mhm.
too much work problem sometimes.
Okay.
Like setting a goal for myself.
Mm-hmm.
For this planet and
Okay, I see.
so scheduling my time.
So you're stressed about getting the things that you want to do done.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you actually have time to do them, or you just kind of do so many things at the same time that you never finish things?
Depends on the times.
Okay. All right. Okay. Good. Interesting. You guys are good touching good topics, right? Because when I was at the station in Prague, and I got there, and maybe because there's no trains on my platform, all the boards were all black. So I didn't see any board saying anything. So I wasn't sure if anything's gonna show up or not. And so I was like there, I think I'm the right platform, right? I think I'm in the right place. The train is, it's not here yet, so that's all good. But I saw several people kind of a little stressed. Actually there's 2 guys that came talk to me, there's another person that came talk to me. They're like, oh no, are we in the right platform? And I saw lots of people kind of talking to each other, and some people talking English, some people talking in Spanish, right? So there was like a little stress. And I was a little bit stressed too, because I had no idea. And this unknown, it's very stressful. Right? And it was funny because I decided to record a video about this. So I was talking about recording a video about that topic. And while I was recording the video, the train arrived, right? And so there's two guys who were near me, you could see like, right? So we are in the right place, right? So, you know, so it tries a little bit of that too. So you know, when you let's talk more about that. How about you? How are you? I'm not. Do you think about it? Anything? It's, I don't want to put anyone on the spot, right? But
Yeah, I know. I'm thinking I want to have some stable job that's not too stressful, like my current job.
your job is very stressful right now.
Right now, yeah.
Okay. All right.
A lot of stuff happening, a lot of responsibility on my back, so
Mhm.
not easy.
Okay.
Yeah,
So do you want an easier job?
maybe. Ease up a little.
If you had an easy job that's very boring, would that good for you?
I don't think so.
All right. Okay.
You know, I like the challenges, but not so many in so little time in the world.
Right. Okay, but not so many, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay, that's a good point about that. How about you?
Like I just want to enjoy my job, and I'm enjoying it at the moment, so I can answer like. Well,
So you don't have any problem right now. Everything's
Yeah.
fine.
yeah.
So I hear this from time to time. That everything's fine. So the question is in my mind is, what the hell are you doing here? Because there was a discussion about career, and usually people come here because they have some problem.
First of all, I'm just going here every month.
Good.
So it's like, yeah, this month I'm meeting here again.
Perfect. Let me read what I wrote today about being the Java Champion. Just so you guys, you know. So here's what I wrote today. I'm not gonna read the whole thing. Just one part that relates to you. I say here, do you want to know a good and easy way to help? Support a local user group. How? Attend every meeting, even when you're not fully or at all interested in the topic. So,
Amen.
congratulations. That's perfect, yes. Put your hands together for him, right? That's perfect, right? Yes. This is great, man. You know, attend every meeting. So it doesn't matter. So I like that. You know, you like your job, you're happy, that's good, you know, but I'm happy to help you if anything you want, okay?
Yeah.
So if anything I'm saying can be serious, that's good, right? So let's talk about those things here, right? And anything else? If I just answer those questions, everyone's gonna be happy, or is there anything else that you guys wanna talk about that I didn't put here?
Well, of course, how can I make more money?
Make more money. Okay, good. You know, make more money.
Elephant in the room, yeah.
Does everyone want that? Make more money? You want to make more money too?
It's always better to make more money.
Okay, so there's something you're interested in here, right? So,
Because
yeah.
outright lies are squared.
Right.
How do you evaluate when you are a contractor, when you get an offer, and how do you evaluate if or take the opportunity or let it go live? How do you evaluate the people, or are you able to detect that the people are incompetent and that the project will fail because of that?
Mhm.
Do you have anything what to look at?
Okay.
Some interesting pointers, no go this way, or something like that.
Okay, so separate two things. How do you evaluate an offer and red flags?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Good.
If they comment out code. If they comment out code.
Right. Yeah, you come
That's you don't
Well,
find
actually-
out before you get into that place, you know?
You know-
I mean, before.
You know, that's actually that was one of the most interesting projects I've ever done. So that's why I talk about it very fondly to this day. So I know the fact that they comment all the code is a good thing because I can help. All right. So let's take a look at some of those things here, right? So let me start with a couple of things that what you said, right? So managing time, right? so there's two basic excuses that we have for anything. That I don't have the time, I don't have the money. Because no one has the time, no one has the money to do what they don't want, right? So that's a basic excuse, right? But you mentioned about managing time. And time is not something that you manage. Right? Yeah, because time, you know, you time just passes, right? So either you use the time or you don't use the time, right? So and I think that you're very stressing when you don't manage time, right? And so do you participate? Do you guys do a lot of meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So let me tell you, because that's going to be important for you that you want to be a manager. Right? Let me tell you about two different types of people in the company. Right? The managers and the engineers. So here's the problem that we have in companies, right? Is that managers, they work when they have a meeting. That's their work. You know, they have a meeting, they're doing work. Right? Technical people, they work when they're not in a meeting. And so there's a fundamental disconnect between those two. Right? And the problem with the meetings is that it's very simple. It's like this. You know, I need to do some work. So I get you two, because you two have the BJ, etc. Right? So I get you two and say, you know, I'm a manager. Hey guys, I need you two here in a meeting, right? So you come here. We spend 1 hour here. I did work because that's my work. My work is to be on meetings, right? So I do work on meetings. And then once that meeting finish, I can go to another meeting and be productive in the next meeting. But you can't. Because the fact that you're thinking about something, I interrupted you. Now, when you go back, you have no idea where you are anymore, and you have to rethink about everything you're thinking. And so now you will spend, you know, like the rest of the day being unproductive because of my meeting that I put you. And that disconnects. If you go to a lot of meetings, that is something that you have to solve, right? Because for an engineer, for a technical person, you do work when you can work for a certain period of time uninterrupted. If you get interrupted, you lose everything. And if managers don't understand that, they will very easily interrupt you too many times, and then you get never done any work, and then you get very stressed about it, right? So an easy thing that I do a lot, and I do with my teams too. The easy thing is that you protect a part of your day. You decide whatever it is a part you protect. So for example, you know, in the morning I'm going to do 3 hours of work in the morning, right? And then you put this in your calendar. 3 hours. We usually, you know, how we use calendars. We have the whole day, and we just add the meetings to the calendar. Because the rest of the time I'm going to be working. The meetings are the interruptions, right? A manager, his calendar is like meeting. You know? And so, but we forgot that the time that that's what we should do. In your calendar, yes, 3 hours in the morning, I'm going to work, right? You know, and it could be like 3 hours every morning, or maybe, you know, on Monday it's going to be in the morning, so on Tuesday it's going to be the afternoon, whatever, you decide. And then put that thing in your calendar and protect that. If anyone tries to put a meeting, you say no, right? I can't, I have another thing to do, you know, whatever, right? Oh, it's very important, yes, I know, but I can do that time, right? Because if that thing's in your calendar, especially the calendar that's shared with others, right? You can tell, I have something to do right now. Because if you don't cut your meetings, man, you will feel like this all the time.
Good thing I did.
You did.
Put one responsibility away that cut half of my meetings.
Okay, good.
If if I may, I would just add on top of this because a lot of meetings, especially for me, the rule is if I'm not going to speak at the meeting, it doesn't really make sense for me to be there.
Mhm.
If it's something that you need to be aware of, like status meetings, they are usually recorded. I am able to listen to my colleagues at least on 2.0 speed,
That's you.
which is way faster.
Or just ask AI to summarize.
Or use AI to summarize, yes. And also a lot of like these kind of status meetings, like my favorite example is that with my manager we used to have one-on-one meetings. Just for fun, I deleted it from my and his calendar. He noticed in 3 months. Then I told him that basically if he noticed only after 3 months we don't need them. So I don't have like these meetings.
Yeah. You know, be careful one thing, right? So, you know, you should talk to your manager with some frequency.
That's like my manager was in the office, so like this was like really we are still continuing
Right,
to talk.
right.
It's not like that we
Yeah,
are disconnected.
Yeah, I know. Make
Wouldn't
sure.
work for me.
Yeah, make sure that you are aligned with your manager. You know, especially one important thing that we forgot a lot of times. That, you know, our job is to make our manager successful. Our job is not to like our manager. Is not to you know accept what he's saying. It doesn't matter. Our job is to make them successful. So for that, it's important that you know what your manager wants, what's success for him. Right? So, you know, especially if you want to be promoted, if you want to have a higher salary, you know, because you say you want to make more money, right? So you want to have a higher salary. Those kind of things, right? You have to be talking to your manager. But not only of him, remember that your manager rarely promotes you. Who promotes you is the manager of your manager or his manager. So it's important to have a relationship with your skip manager, right, or your skip manager. Now you have to have a relationship with those guys if you want to be promoted, for example, or if you want to get more money. Okay, but yes, you know, cut down the meetings. I have less problems with meetings that are kind of scheduled every week, for example. No, I have to talk to my manager every week. I have less problem with those because I can just work around those meetings easily. My big problem is that how many meetings managers just want to make ad hoc, right? So we need a meeting right now, or the customer is coming, so you have to talk with him, or there's a problem somewhere, let's do a meeting. Those are the ones that kind of are worse because then they cut your day in the middle because you're right in the middle doing something, someone interrupts you, right? And another thing about time management, it is really about priorities. You know, so if there are things, for example, we said the meetings, I was able to cut the meeting and put someone else to do them, right? Yeah. So delegate things, right? So get other people to do things that are not the most important parts. Right? Figure out the one thing that is really important that you do it, and then focus on that.
Organizing jobs.
Organizing jobs is a good one. Yes. Okay, so that's some. I mean, if there's anything more specific, but that's some of the more generic time things, right?
Yeah.
Now, the stress. Here's the problem with stress, guys. Stress is something that. Stress is good. You know, yeah, stress is good because that's what keeps us alive, right? Really. But the way our bodies are made for stress is that you know there's a lion, and then you fuel your body of energy and you run from the lion, and then once that's over, it's over. But the type of stress that we build today is a stress that never ends, right? And then you keeping high alerts for a long time, and that's really bad for us, right? So because of that, it's important those things that are really stressful for you. A lot of them is because of unknowns, right? So make sure that you write things down. You know, you define what's the real goal. A lot of problems that we have. Was that something you guys asking here? No. A lot of problems that we have is we are not very clear what we really want to do. We're not very clear what our main goal are, our main objectives are. And because of that, what happens is that we get this stress level all the time. Okay, I don't know what needs to be done, I don't know what needs to be done, I don't know what needs to be done. And so one thing that I'm very good at is in the whole thing about solving problems I talked before. One thing is to figure out what exactly needs to be done. What is success? What is success for your career? What is success for the project? What is success? Because then, instead of just kind of doing things randomly, we focus on what needs to be done. Cool? Does that help? More or less? A little bit? Okay. So, let me mark those two here. Now, what got us to the easier job, right? With challenge, right? You know? People talk a lot about imposter syndrome, right? And for me, imposter syndrome, it's you know, it's when you're doing things that you don't know and have done before. And so you get stressed because you've never done before. And so you feel like an imposter. But the opposite of it is, I've done this thing before, and I'm just gonna do something I already did. And then you get to the boring project, right? So that's the thing we're talking about. So I wanna be a challenging project, but not so challenging. And here's an interesting thing, is that, have you ever heard of the idea of working outside of your comfort zone? Right? Everyone talking about working outside the comfort zone? So here's the problem with that. Let's imagine that this here's your comfort zone, right? So people say you have to work outside the comfort zone. So you have to work somewhere here, right? It's outside the comfort zone. Right? And the problem is that totally outside the comfort zone is very stressful. So basically we do have 3 areas. Oh, it was supposed to be like this, right? 3 areas, right? You know, we have the comfort zone, right? We have the outside of the comfort zone, is what we call the desperation zone, right? And then here in the middle is what we call the sweet spot, right? So what is the idea here? When you work on the limits of your comfort zone, you have enough comfort to try new things. When you work completely outside the comfort zone, that's the desperation zone. So this even maps with testing, right? Because here's the idea. The comfort zone is when you have, you know, over 80% success. So every 4 times you do something, 3 times you get it right. Okay, so you have lots of success, right? Now, the desperation zone is not the opposite, guys. Desperation zone is when you have less than 50% results. That means every 4 times you do something, you miss 2 or less, right? Or more, right? More than 2, right? So that means, you know, it's almost a hit and miss. You try once, you succeed. Try another one, you fail. And that's really hard on us. Our brains have difficulty on doing this. That's, for example, if you're trying to drive a car to the office, for example. And then one day you get the right, you drive the right path. The next day you miss it. And then you miss again, but when you miss to a different path. So you never know how to get to the office because you always miss it, right? You know, so then it's bad, it's desperation, right? So we cannot work here. So we have to work on this on the sweet spot. There is, you know, somewhere between, you know, it's more less than 50 and more than is that right? It's the other way around. That's okay, sorry about that, right? You know, so you're doing less than 80% of success, right? But more than 50. Okay? So that's where you want to work. So that means every 4 times you do something, you know, maybe 3 of them you get it right. Right? You know, so then, so that's where you want to work. So when you're trying to be something challenging, that's where you want to be, right? So you want to be in a place where you make some mistakes, but not too many mistakes. And a lot of it has to be, you know, when you have a challenging project, for example, you know, try to figure out the things that you can do, right? And then build on top of those things instead of just kind of doing something completely different. right? But if you work here, man, this is really bad. That's stressful, right? And the problem with stress is that in our brains, I don't know how to draw it. You know, you have the brain here, right? And then you have this back part of the brain right here, right? And this back part of the brain is what they call the reptile brain, right? And the reptile brain is the fight or flight brain, right? It's when things are bad, that's where you concentrate your thinking, right? And here in the front of the brain, right here, right, we have what we call the frontal cortex. The frontal cortex is the thinking part of the brain. And the problem that we stress when we're here in the desperation zone is that we concentrate our thinking in here. We concentrate our thinking in a small part of the brain. And what happens is that we're less creative, we're less problem solving, we are less, we're more paranoid, right? We're less happy, because the idea here is for you to have, to think very fast so you can run away. And that idea is that's supposed for you to run away for a few meters, get out of the danger, and then you can start thinking again. But with our stress, you know, we're working on the desperation zone, we keep too long thinking on the basal brain, and then we're not creative at all. Right? And we see this a lot, right? So if you see a child, for example, right? And a child, you know, maybe they want something, they want ice cream, you say no. And then they get nervous, right? And so they start screaming, they start yelling, and there's nothing that you can do because they're here. And then anything you say doesn't get to the child at all, right? Because they're right here. So you have to move them from here to here. Same thing will happen with us. So when you choose stress, when you choose the desperation zone, you have to move your thinking from here to here. How do you do this? You have to do something that it cannot be done in the basal brain. Right? So anything that's abstraction. So for example, imagine that situation is very stressful. Imagine imagine it's a picture. Put like a frame around it, and imagine that was a picture, because that builds. It becomes not reality. I just use the word now. I'm missing out. It becomes an abstraction, right? It becomes abstract. If you put a frame around it in your mind, that becomes abstract, right? Or you do some math. Math only happens here in the frontal cortex, right? So count something. You know, you're very nervous, you're very desperate, right? You're very stressful. Try to count something. How many Coca-Cola bottles there's here, right? And then you count something, and then you move your thinking from here to the frontal cortex. And that allows you to calm down. That's why we have to count to 10. You're very nervous, so you count to 10. Why you count to 10? Because it's numbers, it's math. So you move from here to here, and then you start thinking again. Right? Because while you're here, you're very nervous, you're yelling, then you count to 10, and then you calm down. It's not because you give a pause, it's because you move your thinking from the basal brain to the frontal cortex. Make sense? So, you know, that's the kind of things that we want. We want to be thinking all the time. Right? Because once we move from here to here, we become creative again. We problem solving again. Okay? Alright, so does that help?
Yeah.
And maybe I missed, why do you don't want to be 100% in that confidence zone? Or comfort zone? What was the CD?
Oh, that's the comfort zone,
Comfort zone.
desperation zone, and the sweet spot.
So why don't you want to be more than like 100% there? Like why is the sweet spot less than 80%? Like between 80 and 50?
Oh no. That's the amount of mistakes you make. On the comfort zone, you are 80% correct. So let's say you're trying to do. Give an example. Let's say you're trying to do a skateboarding, and you're trying to do maneuver skateboard. The comfort zone is every time you try to do the maneuver, you get it right. Right. So it's easy for you. You just do it. Right. so that's okay. I mean, you could still make mistakes, of course, right? Because you know, you get distracted or something happens, you could still make mistakes, right? Now, you don't wanna just do what you know how to do. You wanna do the things you don't know how to do, right? And so that's why you need to work outside the comfort zone. That's what people tell you. Work outside the comfort zone so you can grow. But the outside of comfort zone, it's not here. It's not desperation zone. So, for example, imagine that I don't do skateboarding, and I say, okay, so now I want to do like a flip on the ramp. That's the wrong thing for me to do, because I'm going to try 100 times and not get anyone right, and I'm going to be very desperate. You know, I want to give up. I want to stop doing. So what you want to do is you want to extend the comfort zone. You want to push the comfort zone out. Make sense?
Gotcha.
Okay. So now how you identify is those numbers here, right? So the comfort zone is more than 8% correct. The desperation zone is less than 50% correct. So for example, if I try to do a flip, I'm gonna do 100% wrong, right? So I'm gonna be terrible at this. I'm gonna hate it.
You know, beginner's luck.
Well, could be, right? It could be. All right. Okay. So let's see here. You know, I'm going to do the high management position, right? So interesting that his question was very. I love the thing, right? I don't know who I have to be visible with, right? I don't know who I need to meet, and that's kind of part of the problem in our careers, right? So if it's not clear to you what needs to be done, you can't do it because it's not clear to you, right? So let's think a little bit. Do you have a manager today?
Yeah.
Do you have a good relationship with him?
Yeah, I would do so. Yeah.
Do you think so? Right? Why you pause, right? I'm not so sure.
He's not my manager for a long time. There was a reorg, and so I know him like for past 2 months.
Okay. All right.
I'm not sure yet.
But you haven't managed before. It's actually a better situation. Do you still have contact with your previous manager?
Yeah.
So he knows who he needs to talk about. Right? He knows how he got to be a manager. He knows what you need to, now he's not your manager anymore, he's even better. If you had a good relationship with him and he's not your manager anymore, that means you can have a better conversation with him. Right?
Yeah.
Or not?
Yeah. So yeah.
Okay, good. So that's a good person for you to talk to. You know, because look, the idea is if we want to grow, we have to figure out the path. Right? So if you want to grow and become a manager, become a director, you need to go figure out who in your network that you know right now that could help you get there. So your previous manager is a great person to do that. If you have, do you have any friends that are managers and directors at companies?
Yeah.
So go talk with them. You know, because the more people you know that are managers, that are directors, the more chance, that's trust and visibility talked before. If you have friends that are directors, for example, they should know that you want to become a director. Right? And of course, you don't go to them and say, hey, I'm trying to be a director, hire me. That's a bad idea. Right? Because you know, they're not going to feel pressed by you, and they don't even know if you're capable of doing this or not. But if you go to them and say, look, you know, I'm thinking about my next step in my career, etc. So I want to see what you do. You know, you're a director of a company. You know, do you think that could be an interesting thing for me? You know, what do you do? Can you tell me a little bit what you do? Because now that you show interest on what he's doing, right? And you ask questions to him. Now, first of all, you're going to know more about what the position is, how it works. But now he knows you want to do that. So he's not going to be paying attention to opportunities for you to do the same thing. Make sense?
Yeah.
And remember that we get promoted not by what we will do. We get promoted by what we're already doing. So the sooner you can do anything related to management, the better. So if you can manage something in your team, if you can manage the user group, for example, right? So it's a good thing, right? So you manage the user group. So that's a management experience, right? If you can manage the Christmas party of the company, right? I want to manage that, right? So you manage those things that are not the fundamentals, not the main work. You find a way to gain management experience without being a manager. So then you can show what that. Make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So for example, you say, I want to be an engineer manager. So do you have any friends that, maybe they're in university or maybe they are in university, but they're trying to do their own company? You have friends like this? Like 2, 3 doing their startup, something like this?
I'm not sure.
Not sure.
Maybe.
Maybe, right? Or maybe it's just students at university that you might know, right? So find a group of people that are doing something, doing something together, and tell them, look, I can't work with you guys because I don't have the time, but I'd love to help you manage the projects that you guys are doing. That could be an open source project, for example, right? Where there's lots of activities, management activities that the developer don't like to do, that you could be the volunteer to do. The best way for you to participate in a project, especially an open source project, is when you are willing. Oops. Oh man, I thought it was something falling. It was just a piece of paper. Okay.
I don't worry about it.
Right. Sorry.
Don't worry about it.
I thought something was falling down. So the best way to participate in an open source project or any project is to figure out what the other people don't want to do. So there's an open source project, people don't like to do documentation. If you go do documentation, that means everyone wants you to do that. You talk about becoming a Java Champion, for example. There's a good example, Rodrigo Graciano is one of the leaders of the New York Java SIG. And Rodrigo, he was in New York Java SIG and he wanted to help, right? So it's like, I always say, hey guys, can I help with something? And then one day, the guy, because they were in like an office building, so they needed someone downstairs to, when the person arrived, to see the person on the list and put them on the elevator, right? And so one day, the guy that used to do that was on vacation, and Rodrigo said, yes, I can do that, right? So it's the thing that no one wants to do. Who wants to be downstairs, right, waiting for people to show up just to put them on the elevator? No one wants to do that. This is kind of the boring part of the user group. But someone has to do it. So if you volunteer to do the thing that no one wants to do, man, great, because it's a big help, right? I like to call those things, I call them washing dishes. If you go to someone's house, in a party for example, then a good way to help is to volunteer to wash the dishes, right? Because that's something that needs to be done, right? It's a pain in the ass, right? No one likes, we learn to figure out a way to enjoy it, right? So people listen to music, maybe listen to podcasts or you do something else. People usually find a way to enjoy because it needs to be done, so you find a way to enjoy it. But if someone could do it for you, you don't have to do it, it would be better, right? And so if you do that, if you go and wash the dishes, then everyone's going to appreciate your help. Now, if what you want to do is you want to do the important things, man, I also want to do the important things. Right? So imagine you get to my house, for example, in a party, right? So I don't know you, first time you're in my house. And then you walk in my house and say, you know what? Bruno, let me tell you this. I saw your room, the master bedroom with your wife. I think that the room that the kids are playing is too small, so I switched them. Right? I put all your stuff in the kids' room, all the kids' stuff in your room, right? So then you have more place, more room to play. If you did this in my house, what would happen? If someone did this in your house, what would happen?
It would be mad, probably.
You what?
Would be mad.
Right, you'd kick them out, right? Say, I don't want you to never come back here, right? So that's what people try to do. They try to participate in an open source project, they try to participate in a user group. They want to do the important things. They want to make the important decisions. They want to change things. They want to make things better. That's not your job or someone that's starting. Because the leaders of the user group, they are the ones thinking about those things. They're participating in the user group because they want to do those things. You know, the developers in the open source code, they want to do the architecture, they want to do the fun stuff, they want to do the new features. So you can tell them, look, go do the boring stuff that I do the fun stuff, because they're going to kick you out of the house. So you have to say, look, I want to do the non-fun things, so you guys can do the fun things. But what happens when you do this? You come back. You get invited to the new parties. And then eventually, you become part of the team. Eventually, you become the friend of the house. And then once you become a friend of the house, you will know enough about the project, enough about the house, to suggest fun things to. And that's the same thing for each one to become a manager. Go figure out what can you do to your manager right now. Maybe there are things that your manager needs help with that he doesn't want to do. You know, maybe, look, he likes to talk to people, but he doesn't like to handle the vacations. So maybe you could be the one talk to people about their vacations. And so it's a small thing that you're doing, but you're learning how to be a manager. Make sense?
Yeah.
So get yourself in doing this as fast as you can, because that makes a big difference.
And what helped also me is joining actually meetings where you are not like really like the target audience, just to like learn what is important, what is, you know, like what is happening where, let's put it this way.
Yeah.
So you are aware. And then you are able to hold conversation with somebody that not necessarily thinks that you are on his or her level.
One interesting thing about this, I have a secret. I'm very well known in the JavaScript community, right? And that's the thing. That's something that I do everywhere that I work, and that got me very visible in the JavaScript community. Is because I like to do one thing in meetings that no one does. Is that I like to take notes. That's like one of the most boring things ever, right? You know, but I like to take notes because I'm too distracted. So if I'm not taking notes, I'm not paying attention to it, right? So I like taking notes.
And do you create mind maps or just the notes?
No, just take notes, right? And a lot of it's just in the computer because then I can type fast and write, right? And
Yeah,
so,
I didn't. Okay, thank you.
yeah, it could be my whatever. But here's the thing: when you just type, there's an advantage of just typing. I'll show you.
So you are one of the first jobs that is going to be replaced by AI.
Right. That doesn't matter. My job is not to take notes. It's not part of my job, right? But here's what I do. I take notes, and then once the meeting finished, I send the notes to everyone. So that's the difficulty with mind maps, because how do you send it to everyone later, right?
The mind maps are way better to keep the concentration.
Could be. Yeah. You know, I like mind maps too, you know. But so for example, in the user group meetings, way back when, right? So there's not even internet, it was phone calls, right? And so we had those meetings with Sun, and not everyone could participate. Actually, very few people could participate. And because I always had flexible scheduling, I would just join in the meetings from Sun, and I would take notes. And then once the meeting finished, I would send an email to the JavaScript mailing list saying, hey guys, here are the notes from today. And so a lot of people just knew who I was because they were reading my notes. Right? And so I showed up in the meeting, I did the thing that no one wanted to do, right? I would send to everyone else, so everyone else would depend on me for that, right? And then the people from Sun, even if I didn't say anything in the meeting, the people from Sun knew I was there because they would receive the notes too, right? So just kind of a lot of visibility for a small work, right? So so that's if you find those kind of things, it's great. Make sense? All right. So now let's do the interesting ones here, right? So those are the basic ones here. But then I want to be a Java champion. I want to be software developer for the next 22 years. I want to make more money. How to evaluate an offer. Actually, let me go with the offer first, and then we're going to do the other ones. So how do I evaluate an offer? For me, there's just only two types of offer: the irrefutable offers and all the other ones. Right. So if anyone comes to me with a project or some work or like a promotion or a job offer, whatever, for me is if that thing is totally amazing, and I cannot refuse this because it's awesome. Because it pays very well, it's something I want to do, it's an amazing project, whatever. It's an amazing person I'm going to be working with, etc. If that's an irrefutable offer, that's by nature, it's irrefutable. I'm going to say yes, right? Now, if it's not, that the vast majority of them are not, if it's not, and I'm going to say no anyway, then I negotiate. You know, I negotiate until either becomes an irrefutable offer or the other person says, I don't want you anymore. Right? And so that works for everything, right? You know, if you want to have a customer, for example, let me give a true story. There's one time, you know, a friend of mine, I was doing my business, and a friend of mine, he said, Bruno, I want to understand how you're doing. So I told him how I was doing, and he said, can I record this? I said, sure, you can record that. So he recorded like this maybe 1 hour conversation where I told him everything that I did to run my business. And he thought it was amazing. So he asked if he could edit that and publish online. I said, sure. So he added that and turned into 3 episodes, right? He actually launched a podcast called, in Portuguese, right? But it's talking about funnels, right? He launched that podcast. And the first 3 episodes is he interviewing me, right? And so this guy is a guy that's, you know, a friend of mine. He's very well known in the marketing community. Although he's a developer, we work on some very good projects together, me and him. But he has an audience that's completely different than mine. Because I only work with software developers, right? And you know, and I only teach how to run business to my mentees, right? That they already build their reputation, right? So we do the next step, right? And so, out of the blue, this person calls me, and she says, look, I love what you're saying there. I really want your help. And I said, sure, you know, I can help you out, so let's have a conversation. So I sat down with her. So she had a business to help mothers to help their kids to succeed. Nothing to do with me, right? Completely, I had no relationship with anything that I did. And I told her everything I could tell her, and we had a long conversation, all that. When we get into the conversation, she told me, I want you to help me with that. And I said, sorry, I don't help. I can't help you, right? Because all my material is in Portuguese, in English, right? So I have no material in Portuguese. Everything's in English. So I don't deal with non-technical people, right? So it's because all my material is for technical people. I have nothing that I can offer you. You cannot join a mentorship program because, you know, there's nothing for you there. So there's nothing you can do. And she said, but I really want to do this, right? So, you know, can't you do something with me? And I said, look, the only way I could do this with you is if we do an agreement of an individual mentorship. And she said, okay, so let's, but no, for me to spend time with you individually is going to just cost a lot of money. And she said, how much? And I was like, oh man, how much money? Because that's the thing, right? So it has to be something that I'm willing to do it, right? So now I'm going to put my time into doing this. So I said, lots of money. I gave her a very high price. And she said, deal. Okay, good. So it was really good because I made a lot of money, right? I really helped her out. She launched her product, she launched her business, and she had lots of success. But man, that's it. Right? So I had to make it in a way that was worthwhile for me, right? So that's what I do. You know, if anything, it's not about evaluating. Now, there's the red flags, right? And the red flags is if I feel that I don't want to work with you, I don't work with you. It's not like, oh, I'm very an analytics and oh, that's this and that, right? No. You know, if I feel especially, here's the thing. I'm a mentor, right? So that's my main thing that I do today, right? So and my work is to help you achieve what you want, right? And so if I get someone that does not want to be mentored, right? Because they know everything, they already know what they're gonna do. You know, there's like I had a guy like this that he was actually working with this friend of mine. He was not my customer. He was working with this friend of mine. And then, and because I was helping my friends, I would go in the meetings with him. So when my friend canceled his business and went to do something else, this guy said, "No, can I continue to work with you?" I said, "Sure. I'm getting some people from my friends. That's okay." And then we started doing some work, and it's like 2-3 meetings into, I told him, I said, "Look, man, let me tell you this. Every time you come here, you don't do anything that we're talking about here, right? You disagree with everything I'm telling you, and you tell me things that for me makes absolutely no sense. You tell me that those things don't get any results, right? And everything that you want is for me to agree that you should be doing what you're doing." And I said, "That's not working. So, goodbye. Go do your own stuff, right? If one day you're willing to come listen to what I have to say, and we can have a conversation, and and we can look at what you're doing and agree on something, then we can, maybe we can work together, right? But I'm not gonna work with someone that doesn't want to work with me." So that's for me is the red flags are more like the feeling of what, I have no problem with the people that are having difficulty, they don't know what to do, or they're already very successful, they're unsure. I mean, all kinds of difficult people, it's okay for me. But the person that does not want to listen, he's not interested in listening, he just want to speak, there's no way that we can work. Make sense? So I do this for customers, right? For self-development customers, right? And of course we do make mistakes, usually when there is like a red flag, and we ignore the red flag, do something, right? Okay, so now let's do the other things here, right? I actually forgot to say how long I have. But I'm just gonna
We need to be back by 10. So we.
By 10?
Yeah.
Oh no. So no, not gonna take that long. I mean, unless you guys want, I can stay here as long as you want, because I'm here just for you, right? So, but anyway, I'll think about at least 9. So if you have more time, that's good. So let's talk about those other things here. So want to be a Java champion, build a reputation. I want to enjoy self-development for the next 22 years. With the market, want to develop 50 years old and make more money. Those are all in the same buckets, right? Why do I think those are all in the same buckets? Because those are problems for people with lots of years of career. People that have 10, 15, 20 years of career, that's the problem that we have, right? Because until we get right to the first 10 years of career, all of our problems are technical. We're gonna learn things, we're gonna improve on things, we're gonna be better, right? That's the whole discussion we're having here, right? So I wanna be better, I wanna be, more expertise, etc., etc., etc. But once you have 10, 15 years of career, then the thing changes. Because now, the expertise, the technical expertise, you already have. So let me tell you one thing that, you have long hair, so you might agree with me, right? There's this little known band, and maybe you've heard of them. It's called Iron Maiden. Have you ever heard of them?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right. So one of my very few claims of fame, I can say, is that I opened for Iron Maiden 3 times.
Nice.
Is that nice? Right? You're like, no, you didn't. So I did the closest I could do, right? So Bruce Dixon, the Iron Maiden singer, right? He was in Brazil 3 times. I think he was there 4 times, but 3 of those 4 times, he was in an event that I used to organize, right? Called Campus Party. And so basically, on 3 of those 4 times that he was there at these events, I was the guy on stage, kind of bringing the crowd in, etc., and introducing him, right? So that's the closest I can do to open for Iron Maiden, right? And so, but I always remember the first time that Bruce Dixon was there in Brazil, and that's, and that's, he was talking about all his entrepreneurship career, right? And he said something very, very important. That he said the following: that the difference between a rock star and a normal musician, he understands about rock stars. I don't, right? So I'm just gonna repeat what he said, right? I know nothing about music. So he said the difference between a rock star and and a musician, it's not the music, right? Because to be a musician, you have to have the music. And the difference that is the things that the rock star does that the normal musician doesn't do. And that's what his whole presentation was about this, right? So, it's being an entrepreneur, is the contact with the audience, right? Is it's how you organize a show, is how you negotiate contracts. All the things that the normal musician doesn't do, that the rock star does. And this is reality, guys, for us. If you have 10 years of experience or more, especially if you have more than 15, you don't need the technology anymore. It's not that you don't need, you already have that. And you can learn anything you want, you can be an expert in all technology that you want, but the difference between you and a Java Champion, for example, that's our version of Rockstar, it's not the technology. It's the things that those guys do that you don't do. Right? And so that's the thing that I think is important, that we go do the things that normal developers don't do. Right? And that is true for the 50-year-old thing. Right? Because when you have 20 years of career, you're 50 years or above, and you're worried about that the markets will recognize value or not, is because you're trying to put yourself into this bucket of the normal markets. And you cannot be in this bucket of normal markets. Right? A good example is, of course, it's like a really crazy example, but you have to understand that. James Gosling, right? Think about this. James Gosling, he worked for Sun, got acquired by Oracle. Then he left Oracle. He worked for both Google and Amazon. He retired at Amazon, right? A couple of years ago, last year, I think. So James, can you imagine? Both Google and Amazon are two of the companies that every developer tells me, oh, it's impossible to work for those companies because you have all this leech code thing, you have all this crazy interviews, etc., right? And people in Google tell you, oh, there's no way to bypass this, right? People in Amazon are going to tell you, oh, there's no way to bypass this. Can you imagine James Gosling, someone from Amazon, someone from Google calling him and say, hey, we're going to hire you, come here and let's do some leech codes? Can you imagine that? What would he say? He'd say, no. Right? I don't care. I'm not going to do this. Right? Of course. And I'm telling you this because I have friends of mine, mentees of mine, that Google calls them a lot. And he says, can you just hire me or are you going to have me to do leech codes? Oh no, there's no way I have to. Okay, so I'm not even going to go to your house. I don't care. I don't want to do this. I'm very happy where I am. Right? So if you want to hire me, just bypass this, I'll work for you. And they're not James Gosling. So of course James Gosling would say, sorry, I'm not going to do it. So that's the point. The reality is that, and of course, James Gosling, here's an interesting thought for you. James Gosling retires with 70 something. It's like 72, I think, right?
That's my goal.
My plus or minus 70, right? So he retired 7 years old, right? Now, he retired last year. Java is 30 years now, right? So James Gosling launches the thing that changed his career when he was 40, right? So I think that's a good moment for our careers. When you're 40 or 50 years old, it's a good moment because you have the knowledge, you have the experience, you can do things that no one else can do. Right? So now, you have to be able to position yourself the same way this would be to become a Java champion, right? You have to be able to position yourself. Because if you don't position yourself, if people in the industry doesn't know you, more than that, if people in the industry does not dying to get you to work for them, right? Or they're dying to be close to you, then you're not going to be those things. Right? Because really, you want people to want you. And if they want you guys, there's a phrase that I like a lot. I thought it was a Brazilian saying, but it's not a Brazilian saying. It came from a Peruvian dictator. Sorry, not Peruvian dictator, I exaggerated. From Peruvian general. I don't know if he was a dictator or not, he was just a general, right? So anyway, so he was to say that for my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law. That's what happens. If I want you, I'll do whatever needs to be done to get you. If I don't want you, oh, you have to follow the process. That's it. I'm not gonna make it harder for you. I'm just gonna tell, that's the process. You know, a friend of mine, very good friend of mine, that's why I'm not gonna say even the company he works for, but works for one of those very big companies. You know, when someone calls him and say, oh, can you help me out on this interview process? He says, no, I can't. You know, he says, go study, figure yourself out, because, you know, inside the company, I'm not allowed to help you. If I don't want you, it's just the law. I just follow the rules. Right? But I can guarantee you that if I wanted to work for his company, for example, that I don't, but if I wanted to work for his company, he would definitely help me. Right? So for my friends, everything. For my enemies, the law. And so that's what we want. You know, when you have, and here's, you're talking about 50 years old, but reality, guys, 15 years of career. That's the threshold. Because after that, things get boring. You know, you keep doing the same thing over and over. So you want the most challenging project. You want the most interesting project. You want the most, the most sophisticated technology. Because otherwise, it's just more of the same. And so, for that, you need to be the guy that gets a phone call, internally or externally. That's why becoming a Java champion is so important. Because becoming a Java champion is not the goal. Actually, that's what I wrote in my email today. Becoming a Java champion is not the goal, right? Because why it's not the goal? First of all, because you have no control of this. There's a lot of people that deserve to be Java champions, they are not, for many reasons, right? I tell my email, I tell the story of Elder Moraes, for example, right? Elder Moraes, he wanted to become a Java champion, right? So I was helping him out. He did all the good things. He did the right things. You know, he wrote a book. He was visible. You know, he did all the good things. And because he did the good things, he was hired by Oracle. And as an Oracle employee, you cannot be a Java champion. So he specifically could not be a Java champion. So it's not in your control. And then he's a Java champion today, but then once he left Oracle, went to work for Red Hat, right? So that's when he became a Java champion, right? And so that's the thing, right? So it's not under your control. So it's very hard to have those goals that doesn't depend on you, right? And so, but you can do the things that bring you the reputation and the visibility of a Java champion, right? So for example, I have mentees of mine that they are in other communities. They are in Microsoft communities. They are in Google communities. They are, in whatever, many other. Perl. There's a guy that's, his name is Mark Gardner. Mark is in the US. He's in the Perl community. So if Mark says, I want to be a Java champion, he's not going to be a Java champion. Because that's not his community. It's not the technology he works with. That's not. Now, he is one of the most visible guys in the Perl community. You know, I remember when he wrote a series of articles, because he's like one of the top bloggers in the Perl community. I remember when he wrote a series of articles about open, object-oriented Perl. And so, yeah, there's like 4 or 5 different ways of doing object-oriented Perl, right? And I have no idea, because that's not my community, right? And so, but the interesting thing is that his articles about object-oriented Perl, all the leads of the top Perl project about object-oriented comment and talk to him. So he's like talking to the top guys, but he's never going to be a Java champion because that's not his community. right? So the goal is not become a Java champion, but it's build a reputation. You know, it's get a reputation. Now the question I was going to ask you is why?
Because of the journey, because all that baggage that you are pulling, not the end goal. I
Mhm.
totally agree with you. Like that whole title is not important.
Let me ask a different question. What do you think it happens to you if you become a Java champion?
Nothing changes.
Nothing.
No, I truly believe that it's will be like I'm already doing the stuff that I believe I wouldn't be doing if I wouldn't set that goal in the first place. And for me, it's important that I'm already like basically involved in these activities.
Right.
And like getting that title, I truly don't believe that anything changes. I will definitely write it on slides, but like that's it.
Okay. All right. So that's a problem. That's a bug right there. Here's the thing. If there is a goal that you have, especially the one that's challenging for whatever reason, and you believe that if you achieve that goal, nothing changes, then there's no reason for you to achieve it.
Okay, continue.
Right? So that's the thing. So of course you will change something, right? Because because you set a reputation.
But you ask if it changes something for me. I truly believe that I already changed something
Right.
in order to achieve that goal.
Okay, that's
But-
right. That's fair. I
But that
understand
title
yeah.
itself, like I don't really see like what would be like different.
All right. Okay, so that's good. You know, so probably not going to achieve. That's okay. That's my point to you, right? Because by the way, that could even be a way to achieve it. You just don't care, right? Because that's my point. Because if nothing's going to change. But the reality is that once you have a recognition like this, it becomes a public recognition. So everything that you did so far, and all the improvements that you did, all the work that you put on, now that becomes public. And because it becomes public, it gives you access to places that you might not have access today. It gives you access to people that you might not have access today, right? So for example, the only reason I'm here in this meeting here with you guys is because I'm a Java champion, right? Why? Because a couple of weeks ago, there was a Java Champions meeting, because Oracle announced to lay off lots of people, so the Java Champions kind of got together to discuss that, and so there's a meeting there, right? And on the meeting, I saw some people from Europe, and I said, hey guys, I'm coming to Europe, I'm gonna come to JCon. If anyone, because I was trying to reach out some user groups in Germany, right? And so if anyone wants me to come to user group or know a user group I should come to, I still have time. I hadn't bought my tickets yet, so I have time. I can come to some places. So if anyone wants to do that, that's fine. So Andro was there, and he's also a Java champion. And so he was telling me that he almost did not come because he's like, I'm not sure if I want to participate in this discussion, etc. But he showed up, and so he called me and said, no, can you come to Prague? I said, sure. And then you guys got in the thing, and so we did the whole thing, right? But so being a Java champion, it gave me and Andro a place to discuss things, and I'm here because of that. So of course you do have access to something that you don't have access to, right? And I think that understanding this is important. You might have access inside your company, for example. Once you become a Java champion, people in your company start seeing you as external recognition. Here's one thing you have to understand. External visibility brings internal visibility. Right? So right now, people in your company know you and trust you. But maybe you're not on the radar, or some people. But if you have very high visibility outside, you become more visible inside. That's how you get jobs after 50. You have visibility. And then people want you to work for them. Right?
It's very hard to maintain in a place where you are frequently.
Where you are what?
Where we are not frequently, where we're not in person. For instance, 2 years ago I had a presentation in Vienna in DevFest.
Mm-hmm.
And I attend Java meetups in Vienna now and then. It's not very frequent.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to people, but I do remember them. Maybe I'm different a bit, but they don't remember me.
Of course.
So that's why I mean it's hard. To
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's very, very hard. That's why. Can I tell something more absurd than that? I send to my newsletter. I send emails to people every single day. Every day. And if for any reason I got like an event, for example, and I spend a week, maybe 2 weeks, that I can't send email for whatever reason, there are people that unsubscribe from my newsletter saying, I never subscribed to this. I don't know who this guy is. 2 weeks, man. 2 weeks is enough for me to get this kind of answer. Right? And I send email every single day. So yes, people are not going to remember you. People forget about you all the time. You know, because you're not in their minds. There's no reason for them to think about you. And that's the thing that happens. You know, because for example, if you're the C-level in your company, when he has a problem, if they don't remember that you're the guy that can solve it, he's not going to call you, right? When someone is looking for you know, for example, we're talking about me being the NetBeans community manager. When Sun needed a community manager, they did not think about the people in the NetBeans team. They thought about someone from the outside, and they didn't think about, you know. And here's what happens, right? So one thing I didn't tell. Once the position showed up, right, after I got the job, I have several people call me. The two in particular was very interesting. One is a very good friend of mine. She runs the developers conference, right? Yada is her name. And Yada is a very good friend of mine. You know, we worked together for a long time, many, many years. And she called me and said, Bruno, did you see the position that Sun just announced it? It looks made for you. You should apply for it. Right? And of course, it was made for me, right? So, and you know, I found that funny, and I tell this Yada call me because it's good. Now, there's another person that called me. It was a friend of mine too, and I'm not going to say his name. But he called me and he said, Bruno, did you see the position that Sun just announced it? It's awesome. You know, do you think I have a chance? Should I apply? And that hurts. It hurts when someone like this, because he was talking to me and I could tell him, man, you know, that's my position. You know, don't waste your time. But the vast majority of cases, you have no one to discover that, and you will apply. You'll be waiting for a response. You're never gonna get it, right? But my point in all this is that you know, there were people outside of Sun, there were good people that could be considered for that position. But the person that was hiring did not think of them. Right? And because she did not think of them, they did not get hired. Right? And so you have to be that person to get people to remember. So that's what a Java Champion brings you, is this constant visibility. It's not perfect. It's not everyone thinking about you, of course, right? But this constant visibility, right? A place that you can talk about things. A place that inside your company. You know, once you become a Java Champion, how many Java Champions there is in your company right now?
A lot.
A lot? Well, so when there's any kind of problem, they think of them, not of you.
That's where I would not agree.
Okay.
At least in like my team, I have a bunch of Java champions.
Mhm.
I can tell you that we don't think about them. At least I don't. Like this, we have people that are experts in their relevant areas, and
Mhm.
I don't really care if you are a Java champion or not.
Right, you don't care. But are you the guy that gonna promote those people?
Not promote this.
You're the one
No,
that
no,
promotes them?
no, not
No,
promote.
right, yeah. That's the point, man. You know, we gotta be visible to the people that are gonna make a difference for us, right? So it's gonna promote us, it's gonna increase your salary, right? That's the question you ask here, how to make more money. You know? And for you to make more money, you have to be the guy, because you know, at certain level, those positions don't exist anymore.
I would also say you don't need to be the guy, just need to be the guy that knows the guy.
That's true too, yeah. No, you need to be the guy that people think about,
Yes.
right? I always remember this case with a mentor of mine, his name is Ronaldo. So Ronaldo, he wanted to be more involved in AI things in his company, right? So, prepare a plan, he did all the right things, all of that. So he gained the visibility inside his company, right? So his manager was telling him, man, you're a celebrity here. Everyone's talking about you in the company, right? And so that's great because then he has visibility. So then what happens that the CEO, CTO, 3 levels above him, the boss of his boss of his boss, the CTO of the company, called him directly about an AI problem. And his boss like, man, the CTO doesn't talk to me, but calls you directly, right? Now, the CTO called him and said, look, we have a problem with this project. And so Ronaldo called me and said, Bruno, what do I do? It's a Python project. I'm a Java guy. I said, no. Inside your company, man, you're the AI guy now. Right? So they're thinking about you for AI, so go there, solve the problem. And then he did. He went there and solved the problem of the Python project, right? Because the reality is that people are trusting him on that topic. And that's what we want. We want, it doesn't need to be the manager, it doesn't need to be the CTO. It just needs to be who you want to make a difference. So for example, for me, I have I actually have a one-person company. It's not like a one-man show. It's not a one-man show because it's me and my wife, right? And my daughters help me out with some things. I have Louise, the guy that works with me, that help me out with some things. So there's Paul. There's a few people that help me out, right? But the company is me and my wife, right? And so I honestly don't care that anyone above me knows who I am, right? I care that you guys know who I am because you're the guys that work with. You're the guys that can help, right? You're the guys that I can help advance a career. So what do? I come here, right? Of course I came here, right? So Bruno, right? So that's a Bruno city, right? It's like, I don't think there's any other Bruno city in the world, right? That's the closest one forever, right? So I'll search if there's a Bruno city everywhere, right? But no, I told him, right? So when he said, oh, I'm not gonna have the big room, I said, I don't care. It's a Bruno city, I have to go there, right? But anyway, but my point is, I wanna come here because you are the people I want you to know that exist. Right? And so you have to figure out who that person is. If it's your director, if you're VP, if you're C-level, if it's other companies, right? So because you have to have visibility, like you said, now in my team, everyone thinks of me. Perfect. So you have a reputation within your team. But if that reputation is the one that's going to take you where you want, that's the question. And if that's not going to take you where you want, it's not enough. And then you have to figure out what is that's the same thing for you. It doesn't help, in his case, for example, it's more clear, right? It doesn't help if everyone in your team knows who you are, because you want someone above that can move you from where you are to be above your team. And it's not going to be your team that's going to do that. It's not a democracy that we're going to elect you to be a manager. Someone above you and someone that's not your manager. It has to be someone above your manager, director level, VP level, because they have to get you and move you in place of your manager. Right? So it's not going to be your manager going to do that. So if you don't have visibility with those guys, you're not going to get that position. Right? But I don't want to get the position inside my company. I want to get outside of my company. Same thing. Someone with director level in another company has to know who you are and trust you, so they can hire you into that position. Because what happens, guys, once you grow beyond senior, the positions get very small. The numbers reduce a lot. I have a mentor of mine, for example, he was telling me the other day that he works in a large company, about 3,000 people in the technical department, right? In the tech development departments. 3,000 people, not our development, 3,000 people. From those 3,000 people, they have on the beyond senior positions, right? They have about 150 staff engineers. They have about 20 principal engineers and 3 distinguished engineers. Those are the levels above, right? So like manager, director, VP. So less than 5% of the departments are in the beyond senior positions. That's why it gets so hard when you're 50. It's not because there's no position for you. It's because the position that you want are very few. Right? Because you're not going to get any position. You know, you want the best ones. You want the more with more impact. You want the more challenges. You know, you want one that can do your experience. And so, for example, let's say you've been working for the last 10 years in your career, for example, with performance. So you get to a point that you're not interested in any performance problem. You're interested in the most complex performance problem because everything else is easy for you. And so how many of those positions exist inside your company? It's like none, you know, because most companies don't have anyone with that kind of experience with performance, right? It's very few companies that do have. And so if you look around the world, how many people have those positions, right? It's very few. And so you are actually not competing with your age. You're competing for the position that very few people can get. And so if you are not the guy that people are thinking of you, for example, if people in Vienna cannot think about you, imagine the people in the US, for example, that might be the company you should be working for. They don't even know who you are. That's what a Java Champion position can get you. Is this kind of visibility that's kind of grows beyond your city, beyond your country, you know, beyond, it grows to other areas.
Sorry, well, I agree that being a Java champion helps with it. I don't think it's a requirement for you to do this.
No, it's not. It's definitely not
I
required.
mean, it shouldn't.
No, it's not a requirement, right? So because you know, especially because Java Champion is not the only program that exists, right? And because those programs, Java Champion, Microsoft MVP, Google Developer Advocate, you know, Docker Captain, there's many. Yeah, those programs are not because normally people think, oh yes, those programs are because you're such an expert in Java. That's not true. That's not what those programs are about. Those programs are, the way I call it, that's what I wrote in the email, the way I call them is that they are external evangelists, right? Those are people that work closely with the companies, like with Oracle, Microsoft, etc., and that they help the community on those technologies, right? So they are external evangelists. So they are, let's say, non-paid evangelists, right? And so you don't get paid because you actually you're not doing work, right? But it's a recognition of the help that you're giving. And so that's not for everyone. You know, there's lots of people, for example, maybe a guy that you know, Ed Ignatovic, right? From Red Hat, right? So Eder, you know, when he started working with me, he said, Bruno, I don't want to be an evangelist. That's not my goal. I want to be a technical guy. I want to be the open source guy. I want to be lots of technical expertise. So we built his reputation on the technical expertise. But doing this, he recognized that he needs to have a little bit of visibility. Otherwise, the technical expertise is not going to be enough, right? And so he achieved all his 5-year dreams. He achieved in 1 year by building this little bit of reputation that's not being an evangelist. And so now, Eder is a Java champion today, right? But he's a Java champion much more for the work on open source that he has than any evangelist that he does, right? And so he's definitely not one of the most visible Java champions, right? The only visibility that Eder has, for example, is because he runs the KubeCon events, right?
No, like you are saying it like evangelist means that you are not a technical. Like for me, evangelists are one of the most technical people because
No.
they are able to, you know, like talk about the technology.
Yeah.
Only do the technology.
That's the impression,
Yes.
right, that we have, right? And of course, evangelists are very technical. I'm not saying they're not. They're very technical, right? but it's you can't compare the expertise that evangelists have with the expertise that's someone that works on something all day long has. They're different expertise, right? You know, I mean, that's what I do, man. I train evangelists, right? So, you know, I've trained several evangelists, all the evangelists from Oracle, Brazil, several evangelists from Red Hat. You know, I was an evangelist myself, right? So, you know, it's great, and there are evangelists that are better than others in terms of technology, right? But that's one of the things that we have to understand, that the moment you become public, that's the vision people have about you. That's, you know, because people believe that the only way that I can come and give a talk is because I'm very good, right? And that visibility, it's one, you know, that's an interesting story. I was talking to Steve Chin, right? He used to be an evangelist at Oracle. He was the boss of the evangelist at Oracle. He's now in Neo4j. And many years ago, we were it was one of the first times I actually had like a conversation with Steve. We were going to visit, we were in the Java Champions meeting, we were going to visit Google, right? So we all together going to visit Google. And I was talking to him, I said, man, you know, your book's almost ready, right? So aren't you write a book? Your book is almost ready. And so he said, yeah, my book comes out next week. And then he said a phrase that I love that phrase for the rest of my life. He said, right now, I know nothing about JavaScript. When my book comes out next week, I'm going to be the expert. And that's what happens, right? You know, once you become visible, people assume you're an expert, right? Because how would you not be the expert if you're talking about it, right? But
Yeah, I understand what you're trying to say.
right, but you know, I'm not saying that they're not good. I'm just saying that they might be good in different things.
From different perspective, because I still think that like engineer is extremely good in knowing how the thing works, but not in how it's being used.
Right?
And that's what evangelists can do way better.
Yeah. There's you know, there's one interesting thing about that in general, right? So because it looks like we're talking about different things, but we're not. People think that, oh, because an evangelist can communicate very well, right? And I think that communication is a core skill for technical people, right? It's so important. And for software developers, for example, communication is so important that you know, we have Conway law. You guys remember what Conway law says? Who remember Conway's law?
I should, but I don't.
Right, okay, so Conway's law says, more or less, right, so no, I don't have exact wording, right, but it says that the quality of your design, or your system design, is directly related to the quality of your team's communication. That's why, if you are working together in the same room, you build a monolith. If you're working on small teams that are distributed, you build a microservice, right? That's why so many people fail to do microservice, because they get everyone in the same room and force them to build microservice that doesn't work that way, right? And so, so basically, Conway kind of made the relationship that if you are not a good communicator, you're not a good system design. And so that's why I think it's so important, right? It's for you to communicate well. And of course, an evangelist kind of takes this to a higher level, because then he's really good at doing this.
And it boils down to what you were basically saying. You need to be standing out of the crowd.
Right.
Basically, stand out a little bit.
Yeah.
Or
So
more.
let's just kind of talk a little bit here, right? So just quick answer for those things here, right? So enjoy software development for the next 22 years. If you want to be a software developer and you want to enjoy what you're doing, and you have to be the guy that people look for, right? You can do this inside a company, You can grow this inside different companies. It might not be every company. You have to understand that, right? Not every company will have the positions that you want. So you have to be visible enough for the companies that have the position that you want you. And those companies exist? Yes, they do exist. It's every single company? No. Is the company you're working for? I don't know. Right? So, another possibility, and we're going to touch a little bit more about when you're talking about making money, another possibility, and that's everyone that has more than 15 years of career, my suggestion is you should have a business. Could be a small thing on the side that you just do for a few hours a week, or even a few hours a month, right? So whatever, it doesn't need to make it about, you have to build the expertise of having your own company. Why? Because it gets to a point where no company will be what you want anymore. Because you want a full autonomy. You want full flexibility. So if you get a little bit of the experience as a business person, right, you can continue to be a software developer for the rest of your life if you want. You know, there's a guy, I never remember his name, right, but I actually searched him the other day. I'll get his name here right now. So the guy here it is, that builds .az files on Microsoft. Let's see what his name is. It's MH. No, that's not him. Where is he at? The formats. .az formats.
Is this valid even when I have just non-paying customers?
Yes, it's
Okay, thank you.
Yes, but let's talk about non-paying costs when we talk about making money. So this guy here, Mark Zibonsky, right? This is the guy that creates the .ez formats. So if you open a .ez file, the first 2 bytes are MZ. That's him, right? So I had a lunch with him a couple of years ago, and he's like an older guy, right? He's retired, etc. And he still works as a developer, right? But he does what he wants to do. And so he was talking about things like, for example, he was talking about that he has this startup that he works with, right? And so, and then he says, they don't have a lot of money, so, you know, they cannot pay me full time. So, whenever I feel like, I go there, I see what problems they have, I spend like an afternoon coding things for them, and that's enough for them to get more money, to get some things going, and then I go do my own stuff, right? And then, you know, whenever they're ready, they have the money, I have some time, I go there, work for them again, and do this, right? So he does what he wants, and he helps people, he still helps customers, right? So we're gonna have to get that, guys. At some point, you have to do this. I know it's not, doesn't sound very fun, but man, once you have like Otavio Santana's a great guy. Otavio, he has like 5 customers. He works 1 hour a week for each customer. That's his job. Right? The rest of the time, he does open source projects. Right? Why? Because working on open source is important for his customers. So, but the only commitment that he has is 1 hour a week to have a meeting with his customer. That's it. All the rest of the time, he does whatever he wants. So, you know, when he loses a customer, he gets another one. So there are ways for us to build a business that we like. That's going to do what we need to do. Okay, with that, you know, so the Java Champion, build reputation. I think that, you know, you're already doing user groups, you're already doing community. There's lots of things you're already doing. How to become a Java Champion? You need to get someone that knows you. You already said there's lots of Java Champions in your group. To agree that you should be a Java Champion and nominate you. That's what you need to do. If there's lots of people in your team, you can talk with them. You know, some people don't have problems to nominate someone from their teams. Some people do have problems, and they're gonna figure out someone else that can nominate you. Right? You know, I tell my mentees, I don't nominate any of my mentees. You know, if I can help them build a reputation. They can get to a high reputation in the market, and then they can figure out someone to nominate them, because I think I don't feel comfortable, right, in nominating someone from my team, for example, right? Okay, so that's the maybe that's the only thing that's missing to you. Maybe we could talk a little bit more just in the details, but would the market want to develop as 50 years old? Of course. I have no doubt with that. Your expertise is still, now, who needs you? That's the question. Now, let me rephrase the question. Would the market want a developer that's 50 years old? Probably not. Would the market want a developer that builds, finance systems to prevent credit card fraud using Java and cloud? Yes. See what I'm talking about? Just a developer? If that's what you are, I'm a Java developer, I don't need you, because there's 12 million people out there that do the same thing. But your particular expertise that you have, I can guarantee you no one else in the world has what you have. 22 years of experience, man. You are a rock star. You have an expertise, you have an experience, you have done things that if you are able to put that into a clear message, no one else has what you have. And I know this because I work with people like you all the time. You have things and no one knows that you have. Because maybe even you don't realize that there's something important. Right? Let me ask one thing. What does the fish do that is amazing?
Breathe underwater.
Breathe underwater. Perfect. It would be awesome if you could breathe underwater, right? So the fish does that, it's amazing. Now, if you ask the fish, oh man, that's amazing, you breathe underwater, what's he going to tell you? Yeah, it's what I do. Right? It's normal for me. That's you. You're the fish. There's something that you do that I have no idea what it is. There's something that you do that's amazing. That because you do that, people around you are better off. And normally, people around you know exactly what you do that's amazing. Because they benefit from there. They trust you on this. Right? They like you for that. They have results because of that. And for you, that's nothing, because that's just normal. Right? So then you have to figure it out. Once you figure that thing out, man, that's how you become an evangelist, for example, right? Because then you figure that out. All right. Make more money. Guys, this is the big question, right? This really is. Make more money, right? And there's a couple of things about making money. First of all, there's two ways to make lots of money. One is you can solve a very small problem for a lot of people, or you can solve some very big problem for very few people. So for example, Uber solves a very small problem, asking for a cab. Something that in the past you would go on the street to do like this with your hands. That's a very simple problem. But they solve this for millions of people. That's McDonald's, right? I love the guy. There's a commercial for McDonald's. My daughter does. She produces commercials, right? So she produces most of the commercials for McDonald's because she produces those. But there's many years ago, there's this McDonald's commercial that said something like this. You had like the little music for Big Mac, and then the person would say, every child knows the recipe, but doing it millions of times a day, everywhere around the world with the same quality, that's the difficult part. Yeah, so you're solving a small problem for lots of people. That's a great way of making money. Or you solve a very big problem for very few people. For example, SpaceX is doing rocket ships to send NASA to the moon, right, or whatever. Yeah, that's a really big problem, right? It's just like one company in the world that has that problem, right? It's NASA, right? No one else has, right? And so, more or less, right? But so that's the thing. So we have to figure out Where do you want to be? Right? I like to solve big problems for a small group of people. I think it's easier. There's more money in it. There's no, all the big companies do that, right? And we do this as developers. We do this. Everyone here has one job, right? So you solve a big problem for one company. That's what you do right now. That's why you get lots of money. They pay you, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, because you solve a big problem for one company. Now, what if you could solve not for one company, but for a few companies? Then you're never going to have this question anymore, right? And you can make a lot more money, and potentially even do less work. So that's why I think you guys should be thinking about some kind of business. I'm not saying that you need to build a software or anything like this. No, just figure out some kind of business. If you want to make lots of money, that's it. And the second thing I want to talk about money, that's so we can finish here, is there's two other ways to make money. I mean, there's two ways in one sense, two ways in another sense, right? The other sense that I'm going to say is that, you make money with two things. One, things that you will do, and two, things that you already did. If you want to make lots of money, you have to have at least 3 income sources. Your salary is one. Maybe your investment is another one. What's the third? Right? Warren Buffett, the billionaire, when I saw that, I'm not sure how it is right now, but he had like 93 sources of income. Right? So you want to make lots of money, it's not going to be your salary. It has to be more than one source of income. Now, here's the thing. If you make money things that you will do, it means that you have to be there to do it. For example, that's your salary. They pay you a salary because you're going to spend the whole month coming to their office. They pay you a salary for that. So you're getting money for what you will do. Now, what is money for things that you already did? For example, investment. You save money, invest on something, so you already did the work. Now you're making money because you already did the work. So you don't have to do the work again. Right? Because you already did the work. Writing a book, for example. You write a book, you make money for things you already did. You don't have to do it again. So the only way for you to have 3, 5, 10, 93 sources of income is if the vast majority of them is things that you already did. That's why software is so important, because you spend a lot of time developing the software, but that's done. You can make money for what you already did. That's why software scales. Right? So you have to figure out, you want to make lots of money, you have to figure out how you can use your reputation to turn the things that you will do into things that you already did. The more of those that you have, the more income sources you have, the more money you make. That's why so many developers do investment, for example. Because it's an easy one. You get money from your job, from salary, you put money in investments, and then you make money because you get what you will do, your job, turn into things you already did, your investments. And then you make money out of this. So that's why so many developers have that. Because it's one that they don't have to think a lot. But if you guys put your head, think a little bit about what you do, man, there's so many things you can turn into things you already did. And that really gets you a lot. Reputation example, right? Reputation, you build a reputation, and now that you have a reputation, you use that to make more money. You become a Java champion, you get a better job, you get a better salary, for example. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, one last thing here, because I'm going to give you a gift. Right? I said to you guys I'm going to give 3 gifts, right? Didn't I say that in the beginning? I already gave you one that's physical. I want to give 2 more gifts, right? So now there would be a good thing for me to have it here. But, oh, it's already here. Ah, great. That's awesome. Okay, so choose courses. Okay, here. All right. Choose window. This one here. This window. Good. Awesome. Okay. Gift number 2. I wrote a book called the Developer Career Masterplan. This book has 15 steps for you to grow your career beyond senior. Okay? Or to senior level and beyond, right? The book was done to be beyond senior, but then PACT thought that no one's going to buy a book for beyond senior, so they said beyond, choose senior level and beyond, right? But it works for both, no problem. So anyway, I have, that's the book here, right? So I got PACT Publishing to allow me to give you the first chapter for free. So if you go to this URL here, right, you're gonna get the first chapter for free of the book, right? So it's a chapter about learning and building skills, right? How to learn back. That's the things I talked about here. It's knowledge and skills, how you find focus and priority. The thing you talk about timing. You know, apply just-in-time learning so you can learn things fast, right? So that's the book here that you're gonna get, right? If you want that. That's gift number 1.
This is my, I'm ready to go.
Gift number 2. No. That's gift number 1. You want that?
I have already subscription on.
Okay, good. So gift number 2. That's more interesting, right? Can I give gift number 2? Number 3. Gift number 3 is that here. You know, I created this training called the Grow Beyond Senior Training. I did for my mentees, right? And so I never sold this to anyone. It's not available anywhere, right? But I decided, because I was traveling here, I was coming here to the Czech Republic, right? I decided to give you guys this training for free. So if you come here to this URL, you're gonna get that training for free. Okay? So now, here's the thing. Because it's not available anywhere, I have to give you access manually. So it's not gonna be immediate. You're not gonna get anything. You're gonna put your name and email, you're not gonna get anything. You're just gonna get a page saying hello, okay, right? And then tonight, hopefully tonight, I can do that. If not, I'm gonna do the train tomorrow. So I'm gonna give you access to you. Now, here's the thing. Once I give you access, the system gives you 7 days for you to click on the button and say, I want access. After 7 days, I have to manually give you the access. We don't want that, right? Now, once you get access, you can have access to it forever. There's not going to be a limit of time that you can watch the training. But you have to say, yes, I want the training in the next 7 days. Is that good? Fair? Okay. All right. Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay, so once you turn off the camera, I'll give gift number 4.
Okay, so if you want to close this for YouTube, because there are still 3 people online.
That's it, right? So everyone online, thank you so much, and I know we extended a lot, right?
Quite a bit.
You know, but you guys have lots of great questions, right? So hopefully that was helpful. So thanks everyone. Thanks for the guys online. I'm still gonna stay here for you guys for 1 more minute, just to tell you one more thing, and then for you guys online, thank you so much.
So thank you everyone online. See you next month.
See you next month. Right, thank you.